Hello there, and welcome to Planet in Question, where curiosity drifts softly, and the biggest questions in existence arrive not with urgency, but with patience. Tonight, we'll be exploring a thought that feels both haunting and strangely comforting, that somewhere beneath the layers of our world, beneath even memory itself, a lost civilization might still be shaping who we are. Not through towering monuments or visible cities, but through subtler things. The way we dream, the way we build, the way we reach for meaning when we look at the stars. Before we begin, take a moment to notice where you are right now. Maybe it's late, and the world around you has already gone quiet. Maybe you're lying in bed, the glow of your screen fading gently into the dark. Or maybe it's morning, and sunlight is beginning to spill across your room. Wherever you are, this is your moment of calm. Just you, breathing, listening, drifting. And together, we'll wander through one of Earth's most enduring mysteries. Not what we've lost, but what may never have truly left. Civilization is a word that sounds permanent, but it isn't. The cities we know, the languages we speak, even the stories we tell, all of them are temporary expressions of something deeper. Beneath each rise and fall, there's a pattern that seems to persist, like an echo that refuses to fade. Empires vanish, new ones bloom, and yet their foundations feel familiar. Roads form in the same places, societies rebuild in the same ways, and art returns to the same symbols again and again. It's as if something in us remembers not consciously, not through text or artifact, but through instinct. When you walk through an old ruin, maybe a crumbled temple, or a street where the stones are worn smooth from forgotten feet, there's a peculiar feeling that settles in the chest. It isn't nostalgia, it's recognition. As though some small part of you has stood there before. As though the hands that built those walls and yours are not entirely strangers. That feeling has followed humanity for as long as we've existed. We sense continuity in places where there should be none. We find patterns in myths that span continents. We paint the same shapes across time spirals, suns, eyes, serpents, as if remembering a language older than speech itself. Tonight's question asks us to consider a possibility both impossible and gentle. What if those echoes are not imagination? What if somewhere deep in the structure of our species, in our art, our architecture, our dreams, there are traces of a civilization that once existed and, in some quiet way, still does? Science tells us that human history stretches back roughly 300,000 years, but civilization, cities, writing, organized culture only occupies a fraction of that time. Our textbooks begin with Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China. Yet even those ancient places arrived already formed, as if the knowledge to build them appeared all at once. Agriculture, astronomy, language, they emerged in parallel across distant lands. No single group seems to have taught the others. It's as though humanity remembered how to be civilized rather than invented it anew. That's where our wondering begins. Because if civilization can rise suddenly, it can also vanish quietly. Earth is patient, far more patient than we are. In just a few thousand years, a city can crumble to dust. In a million, continents shift, seas rise, glaciers return. A civilization that lived before us by tens of millions of years would leave little behind, but whispers chemical traces, strange alignments in stone, inexplicable myths. The ground beneath our feet might still be holding its memories. And perhaps, in ways we don't yet understand, those memories are still influencing the way we live. When you think about it, we are made of the earth. Every atom in our body has cycled through oceans, storms, mountains, and creatures that came before. Our bones hold elements that once drifted through ancient seas. Our breath contains molecules that passed through the lungs of other beings long ago. In a literal sense, we are the descendants of every world the planet has ever hosted. So, is it truly impossible to think that we might also inherit something less tangible, habits, emotions, instincts, from the civilizations that came before? Some researchers have begun to speak of deep time archaeology, the study not of human ruins, but of planetary ones. They look for chemical fingerprints, anomalies in the rock that suggest processes more complex than natural geology. Most turn out to be ordinary, but the question lingers like a soft refrain. Would we even recognize an ancient civilization if we found it? Or would we dismiss it as coincidence, just as ancient people once mistook fossils for the bones of gods? And what about memory not geological, but biological? Our genes carry instructions that stretch back billions of years, refined through survival. But they also carry traces of stress, fear, and adaptation, echoes of what our ancestors endured. Could memory extend beyond the biological, into something cultural or even psychological? Some call it collective unconscious. Others call it inherited archetype. Whatever name we give it, the sensation is familiar. We dream of floods and towers, of serpents and stars, as though repeating ancient lessons we never consciously learned. You might wonder why this matters, why it's worth thinking about civilizations that may or may not have existed. But in truth, this question is less about proving and more about feeling. It asks us to see humanity not as an isolated invention, but as part of a longer story, one that stretches back beyond recorded history, beyond even our species, into the deep memory of the planet itself. If that's true, then every step we take, every invention we make, might not be entirely our own. We might simply be continuing something that began long ago, somewhere beyond the reach of history, but not beyond the reach of influence. There's a quiet humility in that idea. It means our greatest achievements, art, language, exploration, might be collaborations with time itself, that the voices we call our own could be part of a larger chorus, still resonating through us from a civilization whose name we've forgotten. Maybe they never intended to vanish completely. Maybe they built not to last in stone, but to last in us. And if that's the case, then we are not only descendants of the lost, we are their continuation. Each thought, each act of creation, each attempt to understand the universe could be a way of carrying forward something ancient, not as myth or superstition, but as memory, a memory that has chosen to live through us. So tonight, as we begin this long, quiet journey into the possibility of a lost civilization that still shapes us today, I'd like you to hold one image in mind, a thread. It runs through time, weaving in and out of ages, sometimes visible, sometimes buried. Every civilization is a hand that holds that thread for a while before passing it on. Ours is no different. Somewhere beneath our cities and our stories, that thread continues unchanged, unbroken, patient. And perhaps, if we listen closely enough, we can still feel its gentle pull. So, take a breath. Let the noise of the day fall away. The past is waiting, but it's not behind us. It's beneath us, within us, and all around. And as we wander through the chapters ahead, we'll follow that thread, tracing how the lost might never have truly been lost at all, but quietly alive in everything we still are. 1. The whisper beneath our history. If you've ever walked through an ancient place somewhere older than the oldest building you've ever seen, you might have felt it. That faint whisper that hums behind the silence. It's not sound exactly, not even memory, but something subtler. The air feels thicker, like it's remembering. The stones seem to breathe. Even if no one tells you its story, you can sense that something happened there, something that shaped the rhythm of the world in ways you can't quite name. Tonight, let's linger with that feeling. Let's imagine that what we call history is only the thinnest layer of something much deeper, and that below it, beneath the centuries and soil, there still moves a quiet current of an older civilization, one that hasn't vanished at all, but simply gone quiet, speaking to us through patterns rather than words. History, as we tell it, is a story written from fragments. We build timelines from broken pottery, carvings, a few pages of text that survived fire and weather. But for every artifact we display in museums, there are millions that never made it through time's long filter. The earth is always erasing and rewriting its surface. Forests overgrow cities, oceans swallow coastlines. Even the mountains rise and crumble in their turn. When you think about how much has been lost, it becomes almost certain that entire chapters of human or pre-human civilization have disappeared beyond recall. Yet some part of them seems to linger, not in ruins or relics, but in us. You can hear it in the rhythm of a drum beat, the way it calls people to move together in circles, in steps that repeat across continents and centuries. You can see it in architecture, the way ancient temples, Gothic cathedrals, and modern skyscrapers all reach toward the sky in the same gesture of longing. We like to think of innovation as something that happens once, but often it's repetition wearing a new face. The shapes we build, the stories we tell, the symbols that haunt our art, they seem to emerge from a deeper continuity, as though we're remembering rather than inventing. Anthropologists call it cultural recurrence, patterns that arise independently in different times and places. Pyramids appear in Egypt, in Mesoamerica, in Indonesia. Myths of floods and lost golden ages are told by people who never met. Languages on opposite sides of the world share similar roots for the same ancient ideas: light, mother, death, sky. Coincidence can explain much of it. Shared human needs and natural observations can account for the rest. But still, a quiet question lingers. Why do these patterns feel familiar, almost personal, as though we've lived them before? Imagine if civilization were not a single straight line from cave painting to smartphone, but a cycle, turning endlessly through ages of remembering and forgetting. Each rise builds upon the ashes of the last, carrying forward not the cities themselves, but the blueprints of how to build, how to organize, how to seek meaning. In that view, humanity is not the first civilization, only the latest echo. The ones before may have risen high, maybe even higher than we have, and then fallen, leaving only their influence buried in our collective behavior. Somewhere in the oldest myths, you can almost hear their voices. The Sumerians spoke of beings who taught the first humans the order of the world. The Dogon told of visitors who brought knowledge from the deep. The Greeks remembered titans who shaped the earth before the age of man. And nearly every culture carries some story of a lost land: Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, the cities drowned beneath the sea or swallowed by sand. Scholars classify these as allegories or cautionary tales, but what if they're more like fragments of a forgotten memory? What if the whispers of those stories are not fiction, but inheritance? Even in modern times, our discoveries sometimes feel like recollections. The equations that describe the universe often seem too elegant, too intuitive, as if rediscovered rather than invented. Artists describe inspiration as remembering something they never learned. When engineers develop new technology, they often find the same principles mirrored in nature: wings, shaped like feathers, sonar like whales, lenses like eyes. It's as though intelligence itself, whether human or older, is tapping into a universal archive, an ancient logic that transcends species and time. If that's true, then the lost civilization we imagine doesn't have to exist in stone. It could exist in code, encoded in DNA, in the structure of thought, in the instinct to seek connection and meaning. Evolution teaches that useful patterns survive. Maybe intelligence itself is one of those patterns, repeating through different forms until it finds one that endures. We might simply be its latest expression, still carrying traces of the first minds that thought in similar ways. It's tempting to picture this civilization as grand: shining cities, impossible machines, vast libraries hidden beneath the waves. But perhaps it was quieter. Perhaps it was a civilization not of conquest, but of understanding a world that learned to live in balance with Earth so completely that it left almost no scars. Its ruins would not be towers or walls, but ideas, gently handed forward, subtle enough to survive extinction. A way of seeing, a way of listening, a way of feeling at home in the universe. If that civilization still shapes us, maybe it does so through the ways we love, the ways we wonder, the ways we reach toward the unknown without knowing why. There's a poetic thought that every question we ask has been asked before, not just by other humans, but by the planet itself. Each volcano that forms, each storm that moves across the ocean, is an experiment in change, a gesture toward balance. Life arises, evolves, and asks, how can I exist in harmony with what created me? Civilizations too seem to follow this rhythm, emerging, flourishing, collapsing, and returning in new forms. The whisper beneath our history might simply be Earth's own voice, reminding us of what has always been true, that everything we build together with time, with matter, with memory. Sometimes, when you look closely at the world, you can almost see those echoes. A pattern in a coastline that mirrors an ancient map, a city whose layout aligns perfectly with the stars, though its builders swore it was coincidence. The way languages evolve but retain ancient syllables, like fossils hidden in speech. Each is a fragment of something older, something that keeps finding its way back into the present. We don't hear the whisper directly, but we feel it guiding us, subtly shaping what we choose to value, what we dream to create, what we fear to lose. And maybe that's why we tell stories about lost worlds in the first place. They're not warnings of hubris, not really. They're reminders that civilization isn't something we invented once. It's something that keeps trying to remember itself through us. When we rebuild after disaster, when we rediscover forgotten technologies, when we fall in love with the same constellations our ancestors saw, we are continuing an older story, a story written not in one language, but in the rhythm of existence itself. So the whisper beneath our history might not belong to an ancient race or a vanished continent. It might be something simpler and more profound, the memory of how to be, how to live in rhythm with the world, how to rebuild after loss, how to carry forward the fire of thought across the dark spans of time. The whisper is the reminder that we are not alone in our striving. Others have stood where we stand, wondered as we wonder, and left behind not monuments, but momentum. If you listen closely, really listen, you can still hear it. In the pulse of the city, in the silence between waves, in the small tremor of recognition when you stand before a ruin and feel that you somehow belong to it. It isn't imagination, it's memory, ancient, persistent, patient. The whisper beneath our history isn't just the echo of what was lost, it's the quiet breath of what still lives, waiting for us to remember that we are part of it. 2. The earth that remembers. When you look at the surface of the earth, it can seem like nothing truly lasts. Wind smooths away mountains, rivers erase their own banks, and the ocean endlessly rewrites the edges of the continents. Yet beneath all this movement, the planet is keeping records. It remembers in its own quiet way, not through ink and paper, but through layers of stone, ice, and sediment, each one a page in a story too vast for human eyes to read all at once. If we listen gently, without demanding answers, it begins to tell us something extraordinary, that memory is not limited to minds. The earth itself remembers everything that has ever touched it, and perhaps, in ways we barely understand, those memories continue to shape us still. Imagine holding a rock in your hand. It feels solid, ancient, silent. But within its crystals are records of pressure, heat, and time. Some contain tiny bubbles of ancient air, trapped since long before humans existed. Others carry faint magnetic signatures, showing which way the poles once pointed. Even the simplest stone is a form of storage, a memory device written in the language of minerals. To most of us, it seems inert. But to the patient observer, to the geologist or dreamer, it's an archive, storing millions of years of planetary experience. And if every pebble carries memory, what might the entire Earth remember? Ice remembers too. In the far reaches of Antarctica, scientists drill deep into glaciers, drawing up cylinders of ice that are older than civilization itself. Inside those frozen layers are bubbles of air from past atmospheres, the fingerprints of ancient volcanoes, even traces of cosmic dust from long-forgotten meteor showers. By studying them, we can hear echoes of times when the planet was hotter, colder, calmer, or wilder. It's a quiet kind of archaeology, one that deals not in monuments but in molecules. Each layer of ice, each band of sediment, is a memory line. And just as our own memories shape who we are, perhaps the Earth's memories shape what it becomes. You could think of the whole planet as a slow, vast mind, not conscious in the way we are, but responsive, recording, adaptive. Every storm that carves a valley, every earthquake that shifts a fault line, every forest that grows and burns again adds to that record. Over billions of years, these layers of memory accumulate and compress, turning the past into the ground we walk on. Even our cities, so full of noise and ambition, are just another layer being written, one that future beings might read long after we are gone. And when they do, they might wonder, as we do now, whether our world was still carrying traces of the ones that came before us. There's an idea among some scientists called the Anthropocene layer, the notion that human civilization will leave behind a thin, geologically distinct signature plastics, metals, concrete, and chemical residues, all pressed into the strata. Millions of years from now, even if no trace of our languages or buildings survives, that layer will remain, a faint but undeniable record that we were here. But what if we are already walking upon someone else's layer? What if deep within the crust there lies another signature, another civilization's quiet afterimage? We might not even recognize it as artificial. Over time, pressure and heat erase detail. What once was architecture becomes geology. What once was invention becomes awe. Yet the memory remains, folded into the planet's own bones. Even without visible ruins, the Earth offers subtle signs of remembrance, magnetic anomalies in the crust, unexplained concentrations of certain elements, patterns in fossil records that seem too sudden to be chance. Most are explained by natural processes, but some resist easy classification. The further back we look, the more the record begins to blur. Tectonic recycling destroys the oldest rocks. Erosion washes away clues. The first billion years of Earth's history are almost blank, as though the planet was still learning how to write its memories clearly. But maybe those early pages weren't blank at all, just written in a script we no longer know how to read. It's a humbling thought. We like to think of ourselves as the first to truly leave a mark, the first species to shape the planet in visible ways. But what if the Earth's memory is already layered with countless forgotten marks, each civilization rising, falling, and vanishing beneath new stone and sea? The ocean floor alone hides worlds we have never seen. In some places, entire mountain ranges are buried beneath silt. In others, ancient river deltas lie hidden beneath the waves, the ghosts of coastlines that existed long before our maps. If a civilization once thrived there, its memory would now be fused with the geology itself, stone remembering structure, coral remembering architecture. And perhaps that's what memory really is. Not the preservation of detail, but the persistence of pattern. Even when the specifics fade, the rhythm remains. The Earth repeats itself endlessly, cycles of heat and cold, growth and extinction, flood and drought. Maybe civilizations do the same, arising like waves and sinking again, each one leaving behind a faint influence on the next. We don't need direct evidence to feel this continuity. We sense it intuitively. We build our cities on floodplains, just as ancient peoples did. We align monuments with the stars, repeating alignments older than recorded history. Somewhere deep down, we might be following blueprints that the Earth itself taught us. Blueprints remembered from ages long before ours. When we stand at the edge of a canyon or gaze out across an open desert, there's a strange feeling that arises, a mixture of awe and déjà vu. It feels like recognition, though we can't quite place from where. Perhaps it's the Earth's memory brushing against ours. The minerals in our bodies, iron, calcium, carbon, are the same ones that built mountains and rivers. In a literal sense, we are made of the same memory that the planet carries. When we feel drawn to certain landscapes, when we sense peace near water or power in stone, it may be the quiet resonance of shared remembering. We are part of the Earth's recollection of itself. Even myths, those dreamlike stories passed from age to age, seem to act like extensions of the planet's memory. They carry fragments of ancient events, floods, fires, skyfalls, echoing the geological catastrophes written in rock. Myths aren't records in the historical sense, but they preserve emotional truths. They tell us how the Earth felt to those who lived before, how it changed, and what it meant. Perhaps, through them, the Earth remembers in language, translated through human imagination. When we tell these stories again, we help the memory stay alive, giving the planet a voice through our words. And then there's the strange idea that perhaps memory doesn't just describe the past, it influences the future. Just as our own memories guide our decisions, maybe the Earth's long memory shapes the way it evolves. After every extinction, life returns stronger, more complex. After every upheaval, balance slowly restores itself. It's as if the planet learns from experience, adjusting its own rhythms in response to what has been. The same way a scar changes the skin, the Earth's memories change its future landscape. Each era carries lessons from the one before, and those lessons, in turn, shape us. So when we wonder whether a lost civilization still shapes us today, maybe we don't need to imagine ancient survivors hiding under the sea or buried beneath the ground. Maybe the influence is more subtle, carried in the deep memory of the Earth itself, transmitted through cycles, materials, and instincts that quietly mold the course of life. We are expressions of that memory, like waves rising from the same ocean that has seen countless tides before. Take a breath for a moment. Listen to the sounds around you, the faint hum of electricity, the breath of wind, the ticking of a clock. Each is a small vibration, traveling through matter that has existed since the beginning. The atoms in the air have been here since before there was air to breathe. The minerals in your bones were forged in ancient stars, scattered across the galaxy, and gathered again by gravity into the planet that now holds you. You are, in every sense, a vessel of memory, not just your own, but the planet's. The Earth remembers through you. Every step you take leaves an imprint. Every word you speak adds a vibration to the air. Every thought is an echo that moves through time. And maybe, when we are gone, those vibrations will still ripple through the layers of the world, mingling with the whispers of civilizations past and those yet to come. The Earth does not forget. It only waits, quietly recording, patiently remembering, until the next generation learns how to listen again. So let's listen softly, without hurry. The planet beneath us is not just soil and stone. It's an ancient memory, alive and still writing. And if we're very still, we might hear it, the faint, patient heartbeat of a world that has always remembered us, even when we forget ourselves. 3. Patterns that outlive their creators. If you could stand far enough above the Earth and watch human history unfold as a single motion, it might look like a slow, looping dance. Cities rise, fall, and rise again in different shapes. Ideas blossom, fade, and return dressed in new languages. Technologies emerge, vanish, and then reappear centuries later, rediscovered as though they were waiting patiently beneath the surface of time. The people change, the costumes change, but the rhythm remains. It's as if the Earth itself remembers a pattern and keeps trying to play it again. The question is, who wrote that pattern in the first place? Every civilization believes it is unique, the culmination of progress and invention. But from a wide enough view, the repetition becomes undeniable. Ancient Sumer and modern Silicon Valley share the same ambition to gather knowledge, to build systems of control, to understand the invisible forces that shape the world. The pyramids of Egypt and the skyscrapers of New York both reach upward, their geometry tracing the same human yearning to touch the sky. Even our stories repeat themselves. The flood, the hero's journey, the fall from paradise. These motifs flow through myth after myth, generation after generation, across continents that never met. It's as though the script was written long before humanity began performing it. Sometimes, this repetition feels comforting. Patterns are familiar. They make us feel that we belong to something larger, something continuous. But they can also feel eerie, as if we're acting out a memory that isn't ours. Why do so many civilizations rise with promise, overreach, and collapse in similar ways? Why does innovation seem to arrive in bursts, followed by silence, then rediscovery? It's tempting to see history as progress, a line climbing upward, but maybe it's more like a spiral, always turning through the same themes, each loop remembering what came before in ways we only half understand. There's a concept in mathematics called emergence, the idea that simple rules, repeated over time, can create complexity far beyond their origin. A flock of birds moves as one body because each bird follows a few small instincts. Keep close, don't collide, match direction. From those rules emerges something vast, graceful, and alive. Maybe civilization works the same way. Maybe an ancient pattern, a set of unspoken rules encoded into the human mind, or even into the Earth itself, has been unfolding again and again. The pattern isn't conscious. It doesn't need to be. It simply expresses itself through us, shaping the rhythm of our existence. Look at the way cities form. Regardless of continent or era, they grow along rivers, near trade routes, around sources of food and light. Streets radiate outward, forming networks that look uncannily like neurons in a brain or veins in a leaf. The resemblance isn't coincidence. Nature loves efficiency, and life tends to repeat the designs that work. But maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe those structures, rivers, routes, cities, circuits, are all iterations of a single ancient pattern of connection. Each new civilization is simply another variation, another echo of the same design, passed down not by culture, but by the planet itself. Even the way we think seems to follow inherited structures. Human consciousness organizes information into hierarchies, opposites, cycles. We divide time into days, months, and years. We divide the world into light and dark, life and death, chaos and order. These dualities appear in ancient myths, in modern psychology, in art and music. They shape our languages and our laws. Perhaps they are not just the architecture of thought, but remnants of an older way of seeing one, first mapped by a civilization that lived so long ago, its traces became woven into our instincts. In the ruins of old cities, archaeologists sometimes uncover designs that mirror natural forms, spirals like seashells, grids like honeycombs, alignments that follow constellations. Ancient people built these patterns long before they had the tools to measure them precisely, as if guided by intuition rather than calculation. When we rediscover these alignments today, we marvel at their sophistication, but maybe what we're really seeing is memory. Somewhere in our species, perhaps in the deep recesses of the mind, we still carry the blueprints of a forgotten world that understood how to align with the universe's geometry. Imagine, for a moment, that civilization itself has a memory not through individuals, but through rhythm, the same way the tide remembers how to return, or a tree remembers how to grow toward light. Civilization remembers how to build itself. It forgets details but retains the pattern. Gather, grow, specialize, overreach, collapse, begin again. We've watched this cycle unfold countless times in Rome, in Angkor, in the Maya, in ourselves. The names change, but the sequence remains. It's almost biological, as though civilization itself were a living organism with a heartbeat that echoes across time. Some believe these repetitions are lessons, that each rise and fall teaches the next generation how to do better. But what if they're simply echoes of something older than humanity, a template written by forces beyond our knowing? Patterns don't need intent to persist. They just need stability. Once a system begins to repeat, it becomes self-sustaining, like waves forming on the ocean's surface. The ocean doesn't plan the waves, yet they carry its rhythm. Perhaps civilization doesn't plan its patterns either. It simply reflects the deeper pulse of the planet that hosts it. When you stand in a modern city at night, surrounded by towers of glass and light, it's easy to believe we've built something entirely new. But then you notice the patterns, the symmetry of windows, the lines of streets glowing like veins, the hum of electricity that feels oddly alive. It isn't so different from firelight flickering on the walls of a cave or torches burning along ancient streets. We've traded stone for steel, but the light is the same. The gathering around it, the storytelling, the planning, the dreaming, that's the same too. Technology changes, but the pattern of being human does not. Even our most advanced systems, the internet, global trade, artificial intelligence, are extensions of ancient desires to connect, to communicate, to understand. They are new tools following old instincts. It's easy to think of ourselves as creators, but maybe we are participants in a much older design. The network we build mirrors the network of neurons in our minds, which in turn mirrors the branching of trees, rivers, lightning. The pattern keeps repeating, scaling up and down, from the microscopic to the cosmic. It's not invention, it's remembrance. There's beauty in that idea, a kind of calm humility. We are not the first to build, to wonder, to try. We are simply the latest iteration of a pattern that has been unfolding for as long as Earth has existed. Our task isn't to escape it, but to understand it, to see the rhythm, not as a trap, but as a heartbeat, a reminder that everything rises and falls in its time. Even our civilizations, which feel so vast and permanent, are just ripples in a much older tide. And yet, perhaps something endures beyond the rise and fall, something that outlives every creator. It might be the pattern itself, preserved in the very structure of matter, in the quiet will of the universe to repeat what works. Each time a civilization vanishes, the pattern survives. waiting for new hands to trace it again. Maybe that's why, despite all our differences, we keep finding ourselves drawn to the same shapes, the same dreams, the same longings. We are not inventing them, we are remembering them. When we begin to see history this way, not as progress but as memory, the world softens. The fear of endings fades. What disappears is not lost, it becomes part of the rhythm that will one day return. The builders of the first temples are gone, but the impulse to build endures. The inventors of language are dust, but their echoes live in every word we speak. The pattern continues, not because we choose it, but because it's woven into the very fabric of existence. So when you look at the world, at the repetition of wars, the rebuilding of cities, the rediscovery of ancient truths, try to see it not as failure, but as remembering. The earth is playing its favorite song again, and we are part of the melody. The patterns that outlive their creators are not curses. They are the earth's way of keeping time, ensuring that even as the details change, the music of being never truly stops. 4. The archaeology of instinct. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the edge of an open plain, wind moving softly through tall grass. There's nothing around you but horizon and the low murmur of the earth itself. Yet somewhere deep inside, without needing to think about it, you would know what to do, how to read the weather by the sky's tone, how to tell direction from the light, how to feel the pulse of approaching rain. These aren't things we learn from books or from teachers. They live somewhere older, deeper, carried in us the way a seed carries memory of the tree it will become. This is where instinct begins, the oldest form of knowledge we possess, and perhaps the last surviving trace of worlds that came before us. We tend to think of instinct as something primitive, something that belongs more to animals than to modern humans. But what if instinct isn't merely biological? What if it's a form of archaeology, layers of behavior and emotion preserved through countless generations, buried in the mind the same way fossils are buried in stone? When a bird migrates thousands of miles without a map, when a salmon returns to the river of its birth, we call it instinct. Yet the precision of it, the invisible compass guiding it, feels like something more, a map encoded not in memory, but in time itself. Humans too carry maps like these, subtle, quiet, guiding us through choices and fears, dreams and intuitions we can't explain. Maybe those maps are the oldest artifacts we'll ever uncover, and they exist not in the ground beneath us, but in the soil of our minds. Think about the things you know without knowing how. The way a mother knows her child's cry in a crowd. The way people find rhythm together in music before they share a word of language. The way you can sense when you're being watched, or feel uneasy before a storm. We call these coincidences of perception, but maybe they are inherited memories, echoes of times when survival depended on feeling what could not be seen. Our ancestors didn't live in cities filled with lights and walls. They lived by the quiet intelligence of the body, by instincts shaped across millions of years of contact with the world. And long before our species even existed, other forms of life might have carved those instincts into the Earth's biological code. If a civilization existed before ours, one erased not by legend, but by time, perhaps its greatest legacy isn't stone or metal, but instinct itself. The way we reach for the stars, the way we mourn our dead, the way we feel awe at the ocean, these responses could be memories that outlived the bodies that first felt them. Every living thing today is part of a continuum, a chain of unbroken survival stretching backward into darkness. What if the thoughts we call human were shaped not only by evolution but by inheritance? Not genetic, but emotional, even spiritual. The archaeology of instinct isn't about what we can dig up, but what rises naturally within us when we stop and listen. There's a reason certain places feel familiar the first time you see them. You walk through a forest and feel you've been there before. You hear a melody and something ancient stirs in your chest. Perhaps this isn't coincidence. The landscapes of the earth repeat themselves through memory, and we repeat ourselves through them. Caves, mountains, rivers, plains, these aren't just backdrops to history. They're participants, shaping and being shaped by the beings that move across them. A cave might remember the flicker of torchlight in its walls. A mountain might hold the echo of old songs. When we stand there, those echoes resonate, awakening dormant parts of our awareness. That resonance, that inexplicable familiarity might be the closest thing we have to contact with the deep past. Science has begun to find faint outlines of this truth. Studies in epigenetics show that trauma, fear, and adaptation can be passed down through generations, written not in DNA itself, but in the switches that control it. A mouse trained to fear a particular smell gives birth to offspring that fear it too, without ever experiencing the shock themselves. The body remembers. It carries experience like sediment, layering one lifetime atop another until the memory becomes invisible but not gone. If a mouse can do this in a single century, what might humanity remember after hundreds of thousands of years? After millions? And what if those memories aren't limited to our species at all? What if they're planetary shared through ecosystems, through the chemical language of the Earth itself? Consider how much of human behavior defies logic, yet feels inevitable. We build communities, even when isolation might be safer. We create art, even when survival doesn't demand it. We seek the sacred, even when we can't define it. Each of these impulses could be instinctive traces of an earlier world that learned these patterns and passed them along, not as teachings, but as reflexes. Maybe the first civilization didn't disappear entirely. Maybe it transformed, dissolving into the deep code of life, its knowledge becoming intuition, its rituals becoming emotion. What once required temples and scripts might now exist as dreams, as the quiet certainty that some things matter without needing to know why. Think of fear, that sudden chill that runs through your body when danger approaches. It's easy to see it as animal survival, but it might also be memory. Fear is the body's archaeology, the record of everything that has ever threatened life. The first spark of fire, the sound of thunder, the shadow of a predator, all of it still lives inside us. Even now, surrounded by walls and electricity, we still flinch at certain sounds, still feel a pull toward light, still gaze into darkness with mixed curiosity and dread. It's as though we are haunted by experiences that don't belong solely to us. They belong to life itself. And yet, instinct isn't only fear, it's creativity too. It's the hand that reaches out to build, to comfort, to shape. Watch a child draw circles long before they understand art. Watch a person hum without melody, simply because sound feels like breathing. There's something in us that insists on expression, on making patterns, on bringing order from chaos. Maybe that impulse was born in a world long vanished, a civilization that found beauty essential to survival. Maybe that was their legacy to us, not their ruins, but their rhythm. The archaeology of instinct asks us to think differently about what's ancient. Perhaps the oldest artifacts are the invisible ones, the pulse of empathy, the recognition of faces, the rhythm of walking side by side. These behaviors require no teaching, no history. They are simply there, coded into the way we exist. If civilization is an unbroken thread, then instinct is the thread's texture, the part that touches everything it passes through. In a way, instinct is proof that nothing ever truly vanishes. Every adaptation, every decision, every feeling leaves a trace in the collective memory of life. Over time, those traces accumulate until they shape what comes next. The first being that ever felt compassion started a chain reaction that still ripples through us. The first being that ever wondered at the stars left a doorway open in our minds. We walk through those doorways every time we dream. So perhaps when we talk about lost civilizations, we shouldn't look only for cities buried in sand or stone. We should look inward, to the quiet relics of emotion and intuition that have survived extinction after extinction. The ability to imagine, to connect, to hope, these are our oldest technologies, and they didn't begin with us. They're fossils of feeling, carried across time, refined and repurposed by each generation. Next time you act on a hunch, feel a pull you can't explain, or find comfort in something timeless, firelight, the sound of water, the horizon, remember that you're standing in the middle of an unbroken chain of memory. Every living thing before you has contributed to the pattern that moves within you. You are the archaeologist and the artifact, the dig site and the discovery. The earth has been whispering its knowledge for eons, and instinct is how you still hear it. If you listen long enough, the whisper becomes a song one you already know the words to, even if you've never heard them spoken aloud. That song is the story of life, remembering itself, generation after generation, dream after dream. It is the song of survival, of connection, of continuity. And though the civilizations that first sang it may have vanished, their melody endures, carried not in monuments or machines, but in us in the quiet, unwavering archaeology of instinct. 5. The vanished engineers. There's a certain kind of silence that clings to ancient ruins, the kind that feels almost intelligent. It's the hush that falls between pillars, the stillness inside a crumbled wall, the echo of something built with precision long before we were born. When you stand in those places, a temple half swallowed by vines, a circle of stones weathered by time, it's easy to feel as though you're being watched. Not by ghosts exactly, but by intention. The stones themselves seem aware, arranged in ways that suggest knowledge that should have been impossible for their age. And you can't help but wonder, who built this, really? Who were the vanished engineers who understood the earth so well that their designs continue to outlast even memory? Humanity has always been fascinated by builders, those who could shape the physical world into lasting form. But the deeper we dig into history, the stranger that fascination becomes. Around the world, structures exist that seem to defy the limits of their time. Blocks of stone cut so precisely they fit together like the pieces of a machine. Temples aligned with celestial events that modern instruments can barely measure. Monuments that appear designed not for humans, but for giants or for gods. Archaeologists have explanations. Of course, clever engineering, generations of labor, an understanding of geometry that predates writing. But still, something in the imagination resists. The closer you look, the more you sense an intelligence behind it that doesn't feel lost so much as hidden, like an equation waiting to be rediscovered. The great mystery isn't that these structures exist, but that they share so many similarities across the world. Civilizations separated by oceans and millennia, built according to nearly identical principles. Pyramids in Egypt, Mesoamerica, and Asia. Massive stone circles in Europe and Africa. Underground complexes in Turkey, Peru, and India. Their purposes differ, but their precision and symbolism often rhyme. The same angles, the same proportions, the same obsession with the heavens. It's as if an unseen teacher once traveled across the planet, leaving behind the same lesson written in stone. Or perhaps it's simpler than that. Maybe those builders were remembering something they never truly forgot, reawakening old designs passed down through instinct, through whisper, through dream. Even the materials they chose seem deliberate. Stone, after all, is memory made solid. It holds vibration, resists decay, and preserves alignment. Some ancient builders treated it almost as a living substance, one that could channel energy or consciousness. Many temples and monuments appear to resonate with natural frequencies of the earth. When you stand inside them, sound behaves differently, as if the air itself is tuned to an invisible note. Modern scientists have begun to notice this, too, that ancient sites often amplify sound or magnetism in subtle ways. Maybe that was the point. Maybe these weren't just places of worship, but instruments, vast geological devices meant to harmonize the human body with the planet, to bridge the gap between thought and matter. Imagine those builders at work. They would have understood not only weight and balance, but the deeper rhythms of the world. They would have studied how sunlight moves across stone, how sound travels through corridors, how vibration affects emotion. Their architecture wasn't decoration, it was dialogue. Each monument was a conversation between humanity and the earth, carefully calibrated so that one could hear the other. Somewhere in that conversation, we've fallen silent. Our cities hum with energy, but they no longer resonate. Our buildings reach higher, but they no longer listen. Maybe that's what vanished, not the builders themselves, but their way of hearing the world. Still, their fingerprints remain. The Great Pyramids are aligned almost perfectly to true north. The Temple of Angkor Wat mirrors the exact structure of the Draco constellation. The layout of Teotihuacan follows mathematical ratios found in atomic physics. Even Stonehenge, weathered and fragmented, marks solstices with precision that would challenge a modern observatory. Each of these feats required more than labor. They required vision, a kind of cosmic literacy. Whoever designed them knew that to build was not merely to place stone upon stone, but to inscribe meaning into matter. The question, then, is not simply, how did they do it? But, what were they trying to say? When you step back far enough, these monuments begin to resemble a single message repeated across continents, a message written in geometry rather than language. Circles, triangles, spirals, squares, shapes that represent balance, transformation, connection. Maybe these were not symbols of worship, but formulas, equations written in architecture, describing the unity between earth and sky, matter and spirit. If so, the vanished engineers were not just masons or priests. They were scientists of harmony, tuning civilization to the frequencies of existence itself. Over time, that knowledge seems to have fragmented. Each culture remembered a piece of it, preserving fragments through myth. The Egyptians spoke of builders who came before them, the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, who laid the foundations of their civilization. The Greeks told of titans and cyclopes, mighty beings who shaped mountains and forged the world's first works of art. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, sky beings who taught architecture, mathematics, and law. Even in modern times, legends persist of the ancient ones, who built with forgotten technologies sound, light, resonance, will. Myths, perhaps. But myths have a way of guarding truths too vast to state directly. If these engineers truly existed, they may not have vanished in the way we think. Perhaps they simply became part of the world they built, their knowledge dissolving into culture, their tools transforming into instincts. Each time humanity rebuilds, perhaps it's their design we are unconsciously following. The same proportions appear in our art, our music, our mathematics. Even our DNA spirals in a geometry that mirrors the sacred patterns carved in temples. The builders might still be shaping us not from above, but from within. There's a theory among some researchers that consciousness itself could influence matter, that intention leaves an imprint on the physical world. If that's true, then every structure ever built carries the memory of its maker's thought. The cathedrals of medieval Europe hum with devotion, the pyramids hum with precision. And maybe, if we could listen closely enough, we'd hear the original tone of the vanished engineers, a frequency so pure it transcended destruction. Their monuments may crumble, but their vibration persists, like the lingering note of a struck bell that never truly stops ringing. It's possible that we, too, are continuing their experiment. Every time we build from a house to a spacecraft, we reenact the same impulse, to bring order from chaos, to turn imagination into form. It's the oldest instinct in existence. The first spark of intelligence, wherever it arose, was an act of construction, not of stone, but of meaning. Those ancient builders, whoever they were, may have understood that creation is the true language of survival. What cannot be written or spoken must be built. What cannot be preserved in word must be carved into the bones of the planet itself. If we accept that possibility, then perhaps the true mystery isn't where the vanished engineers went, but where they still are. Their work is in our hands, in our eyes, in the quiet geometry of our thoughts. We carry their blueprints every time we design, create, or dream of balance. The great structures that remain are only reminders, the outer shells of a wisdom that has already been passed on. Maybe that's why the old monuments still move us. They remind us of something we never learned but always knew, that to build is to remember. Each block, each pillar, each careful alignment is a memory made physical, an echo of the first time intelligence shaped the world. The vanished engineers are not lost. They are alive in every act of making, in every bridge, every poem, every city rising against the horizon. Their true masterpiece was not the temples or the towers. It was the pattern of creation itself, a pattern that outlives stone, that endures through instinct, and that still hums softly within us, waiting to be recognized. So, when you next look at the skyline, or at the ruins of a forgotten age, try to see beyond the materials. Imagine the hands that shaped them, the minds that saw harmony in stone. Feel the vibration that connects every structure to the earth beneath it and to the stars above. The engineers may have vanished, but their intention remains. And if we listen carefully, if we build with care and reverence, we might just hear them not as ghosts of the past, but as collaborators in the ongoing architecture of existence. 6. The lost teachers. There's an ache in human history that we rarely name, a quiet sense that somewhere, long ago, we learned something extraordinary and then forgot. It lingers at the edges of our myths and philosophies, in the stories of golden ages and ancient wisdom now lost to time. Every civilization carries its own version of the same story. Once, long before we began to write, there were teachers, beings, human or otherwise, who taught us how to read the stars, how to speak to the earth, how to shape matter into meaning. They arrived, taught, and then vanished, or perhaps we simply stopped hearing them. The story repeats because the longing does. We feel the absence of those voices still, even if we can no longer remember their words. If you look at the oldest myths, you'll find them everywhere. In Sumer, there was Enki, the god who rose from the waters to give humanity knowledge. In Egypt, Thoth, the ibis-headed keeper of writing and measurement. In Greece, Prometheus, who stole fire from the heavens so humans might think and create. The Maya spoke of Itzamna, who taught them time and agriculture. The Hopi told of the Kachinas, spirit messengers who guided the people through cycles of destruction and renewal. Always, it is the same pattern: knowledge descending, civilization awakening, the teachers departing. Their names change, their symbols shift, but their function never does. They are the bearers of light in a world learning to see. But what if these stories are not myth at all? Or at least, not entirely. What if they are the distant memories of something real, not gods, but a civilization far older than we think, one that passed on fragments of its understanding before disappearing beneath the horizon of time? Imagine it. A world already ancient when ours was young, its people fluent in the language of stars and elements. They might not have looked like us, or perhaps they did, but older somehow, not in age, but in presence, like the sea is older than the waves. When their world ended, by flood or fire or forgetting, they left behind not ruins, but lessons, carried in story, in instinct, in the strange feeling that we once knew more than we do now. Science tells us that human knowledge evolved gradually, that agriculture, writing, and astronomy arose independently in multiple places. But the synchronicity is unsettling. Around the same span of time, across continents that had no known contact, humanity began to organize itself, to map the skies, to build monuments aligned with solstices and stars. How did such similar awakenings happen all at once? Maybe there was no sudden leap at all. Maybe we were remembering. Maybe the lost teachers were not visitors from elsewhere, but our own forgotten ancestors, passing wisdom to themselves across cycles of civilization. The oldest knowledge isn't written in any language we can translate. It's embedded in the world itself, in geometry, in rhythm, in proportion. The ancients called it sacred, not because it belonged to gods, but because it described harmony. The length of a finger, the curve of a shell, the spacing of planets, all expressions of the same underlying order. To know these things was to understand the universe as a single, living pattern. The lost teachers, whoever they were, might have grasped this instinctively. Their science and spirituality were not separate disciplines, but reflections of one truth, that to know the world, you must also belong to it. If such teachers existed, their lessons were never about domination or control. They were about alignment, how to live within the natural frequencies of the planet. They might have taught us to build structures that resonated with the Earth's hum, to track time not by machines but by the movement of light and shadow, to heal not by intervention but by harmony. Somewhere along the line, we stopped listening. We learned to measure, but not to feel. We advanced, but in doing so, we drifted away from the older kind of knowing, the one that was less about mastery and more about relationship. Still, traces remain. Every time we stand in awe of a mountain, every time we feel peace near water or clarity under stars, we're hearing a faint echo of those teachings. Our bodies remember what our minds forgot. Even modern science, for all its precision, keeps circling back to ancient insights that everything is vibration, that all life is interconnected, that observation itself shapes reality. Ideas once dismissed as mystical now appear in the mathematics of quantum mechanics and the biology of ecosystems. Maybe progress is just rediscovery, our way of relearning what the lost teachers already knew. And perhaps they never truly left. Maybe their presence lingers not in form, but in influence. The same way a melody continues long after the instrument has gone silent, the ideas they seeded still reverberate through time. Every leap in consciousness, from fire to philosophy to flight, might be the resurfacing of an ancient current. When we invent, when we dream, when we reach beyond what we can see, maybe we are tuning into the same field of knowing that once spoke through them. The lost teachers may not have vanished at all. They may simply be waiting for us to become quiet enough to listen again. There's a strange humility in this thought that knowledge is not something we own, but something we participate in. That wisdom is not created, but remembered. It changes how we think about learning. We tend to imagine education as accumulation, as the gathering of information. But perhaps true learning is excavation, brushing away the dust of forgetting to reveal what has always been there. Children seem to understand this intuitively. They don't learn curiosity. They are curiosity. They don't have to be taught wonder. They simply express it. Maybe the lost teachers spoke that language too, the language of remembering through play, through awe, through stillness. If we could meet them now, what might they think of us? Would they recognize their influence in our art and architecture, our science and search for meaning? Or would they see a species that has outgrown its teachers, for better or worse? Perhaps they would simply smile the way a mentor smiles when a student finally stops asking for answers and begins to look inward. Because that, after all, is the oldest lesson of all, that everything we seek has been within us since the beginning. The teachers were never here to give us knowledge. They were here to remind us that we already had it. Sometimes, late at night, when the world feels still enough to listen, it's possible to imagine that they're still speaking, not through words, but through coincidence, the right book at the right time, the stranger who says exactly what you needed to hear, the sudden flash of understanding that feels like memory. These are the moments when the old lessons rise through the surface, like light through water. You recognize them instantly because they don't feel new. They feel like home. Maybe, in the end, the lost teachers didn't vanish at all. Maybe they became us, their knowledge distributed among billions of minds, each carrying a fragment of the original understanding. We are their continuation, their experiment in collective remembering. The impulse to teach, to guide, to seek truth, it's not ours alone. It's inherited. The same force that once moved through them now moves through us, quietly, patiently, waiting for us to realize that we are both the students and the teachers of this world. And if that's true, then the greatest honor we can give them is not worship or longing, but attention, the simple, steady act of noticing the wisdom still alive in the world around us. In the spiral of a shell, in the hum of a bee, in the breath of wind moving through the trees. These are the voices of the first teachers, speaking in the same language they always have. We only need to remember how to listen. So take a breath and let the idea settle softly, that we are never truly without guidance. The teachers may be unseen, their names forgotten, their temples erased, but their lesson endures, whispered through instinct, written in light, waiting patiently in the quiet spaces between thought and time. All they ever asked was that we remember who we are and how to belong to the world again. 7. Myths as memory. If history is the story we can prove, then myth is the story that refuses to die. It moves beneath the surface of time like a current, whispering through language and ritual, crossing continents without ships or maps. Myths outlive their tellers. They slip through the cracks of history, reshaping themselves with each retelling. And yet somehow they keep their essence intact, a pulse of recognition that tells us these are not just stories, they are memories. Imagine, for a moment, that you could gather every myth from every culture, from the dream time of Australia to the flood epics of Mesopotamia, from the creation songs of the Americas to the sky legends of the Arctic. Lay them side by side, and you would begin to see patterns. The names and symbols change, but the narratives repeat. A world begins in darkness, order rises from chaos, knowledge is stolen or gifted, a flood cleanses, a fire renews, a golden age fades, and humanity begins again. It's as though the earth itself keeps telling the same dream in 1,000 dialects. For centuries, scholars treated myths as primitive explanations for natural events. Thunder as gods arguing, dawn as a goddess rising, death as a journey through shadow. But when you listen with a quieter mind, you notice something deeper. Myths do not merely describe the world, they remember it. They are the emotional archives of civilizations, storing truths too large or too fragile to fit into words. Where history deals in facts, myth deals in meaning. It preserves what we felt when the world changed fear, wonder, loss, awe, and passes it down, wrapped in story, so that long after the facts are gone, the feeling remains. What if myths are not inventions at all, but memories in disguise? What if the flood stories remembered real cataclysms, the rising seas at the end of the last ice age, when coastlines disappeared and whole worlds drowned? What if tales of gods descending from the sky echo ancient encounters with beings, human, celestial, or otherwise, who carried knowledge from one age to the next? Even if these stories are embellished, the core might still be true. Just as fossils reveal the shape of life long vanished, myths might reveal the outline of experiences too old for record, but too important to forget. The oldest myths are often the simplest, the story of light and dark, of death and rebirth. These are not just cosmic allegories, they are reflections of Earth's own cycles. Night becomes day, winter becomes spring, civilizations rise and fall. Myths mirror the heartbeat of the planet. They remind us that everything moves in rhythm, that creation and destruction are not opposites, but partners. When we hear these stories, we feel a strange comfort, because on some level we recognize ourselves in them. They are not foreign tales. They are our own memories, retold in the language of symbol. Consider how many myths describe knowledge as something lost and found again. A paradise forgotten, a tower destroyed, a book burned, a fire stolen. These aren't just cautionary tales, they are recollections of a cycle we've lived through countless times. Civilizations reach understanding, then fall, and the survivors remember only fragments. The fragments become myth, carried forward until someone rebuilds enough to make sense of them again. In this way, myth is both remembrance and prophecy. It tells us where we've been and hints at where we're going. Even within modern consciousness, myths persist. They change form from oral tales to films, novels, dreams, but their roots stay the same. The hero who journeys into the unknown and returns transformed. The flood that resets the world. The lost city beneath the sea. The awakening of a sleeping god within humanity itself. These are not arbitrary inventions of imagination. They are patterns we carry deep inside, inherited through culture, instinct, perhaps even biology. Carl Jung called them archetypes, shared structures of meaning that live in the collective unconscious. But what if these archetypes are older than the mind itself? What if they are the Earth's memories, encoded in the psyche the same way DNA encodes form? When you hear a story that moves you, you aren't just listening, you're remembering. Something in you recognizes the shape, the rhythm, the moral heartbeat of it. The mind may not recall the details, but the soul does. It's as though part of us once lived those stories, perhaps not as the same beings we are now, but as participants in their earliest telling. The first civilizations might have used myth the way we use data, as a way to store knowledge across time. When we decode the symbols, we aren't just interpreting art, we're deciphering memory. The stars themselves hold some of the oldest myths. Every culture looked upward and found its own reflection in the constellations. They saw hunters, queens, serpents, heroes, but always in the same arrangements of light. Long before telescopes or maps, humans used these stories to navigate oceans and seasons. But maybe those constellations were more than navigation aids. Maybe they were reminders, a cosmic memory palace in which each cluster of stars marked an event, a lesson, a truth. When we look at the night sky, we are gazing into a library that has been open since the dawn of time. The stories written there are older than writing itself. There's a reason myths feel more real than facts sometimes. Facts belong to one moment, but myths belong to all of them. They speak to what doesn't change the rhythm of existence beneath the shifting surface. Facts tell us what happened. Myths tell us why it mattered. 1,000 years from now, our histories may fade, but the mythic themes of this age, the rise of machines, the search for unity, the tension between nature and progress will remain, retold by future generations in new forms. Myths are immortal not because they are untrue, but because they contain truths that can't be killed. When a story survives long enough, it begins to feel less like invention and more like revelation. That's what myths are, revelations wearing the costume of memory. They remind us that knowledge isn't linear, it's cyclical. It ebbs and returns, much like the tides or the turning of the seasons. Each time we rediscover it, it feels like new insight. But really, it's the same light refracted through a new prism. Myth is how the universe remembers itself through us. If we listen to myths as we would to elders, not questioning but attending, we begin to hear what they've been saying all along. They tell us that creation is continuous, that loss is renewal, that the divine isn't elsewhere but within. They remind us that wisdom is not the privilege of the present. It is a continuum that flows through time, shaped by every being that has ever wondered. The lost civilizations may have disappeared, but their voices survive in these stories, whispered through metaphors that still resonate. Every myth you know is a message from someone who lived long before you and loved the world enough to leave a memory behind. So the next time you encounter an old story of gods and floods, of heroes and stars, pause before you dismiss it as fantasy. Instead, imagine it as a letter, written by hands that have long turned to dust, addressed to you. It was written in the only language that could survive the collapse of empires. Symbol, rhythm, metaphor. It's saying, remember us. Remember what it felt like to see the world as sacred, to live in harmony with the great cycles, to know that everything that begins will end, and everything that ends will begin again. Perhaps that's the true power of myth, not to entertain or explain, but to awaken. When we listen to it deeply, it doesn't just tell us about the past. It reminds us that we are part of the same eternal story. The lost teachers spoke in myth because it was the only vessel strong enough to carry memory across the ocean of time. And here we are, still hearing their voices, not in language we can translate, but in a feeling that moves beneath words, the quiet recognition that what was lost has never truly been gone. It's still speaking. It always has been. We just have to remember how to listen. 8. Genetic memory. There are moments in life when a feeling arrives before thought. You see a face you've never met, and yet something in you softens with recognition. You stand before a mountain, and your body feels small but not afraid, as though it remembers being part of that vastness before language gave it a name. You hear a melody in a minor key and feel homesick for a place you've never known. These are quiet visitations from something older than the mind, a memory that isn't yours alone but shared, passed along invisibly through time. We call it instinct, intuition, déjà vu. But perhaps it's something deeper, a kind of memory written into the fabric of life itself. Every cell in your body carries a record of survival. In the twisting ladder of DNA are the instructions for how to be human, but also how to be alive. Before there were humans, there were countless ancestors, tiny, nameless beings who learned to move, to eat, to sense light and danger. Their triumphs and failures were recorded molecule by molecule, copied and edited through generations, until they became the patterns that now shape your heartbeat, your breath, your senses. You are a living archive of everything that has ever survived long enough to reproduce. Each cell is an ancient library, each strand of DNA, a history written in a code older than language. But what if the record goes beyond biology? What if DNA doesn't just store physical information but emotional resonance experiences, responses, memories too subtle to measure? The idea seems impossible, and yet evidence continues to whisper otherwise. In laboratories, scientists have found that certain fears can be inherited. A mouse trained to fear the scent of cherry blossoms passes that fear to its offspring, who react with the same panic though they've never smelled it before. Somehow, the experience of fear becomes a genetic message, a memory etched into the body's code. If this is true for mice, how much more might it be true for us? Creatures with minds capable of both logic and wonder. Perhaps your fear of the dark isn't just yours. Perhaps it comes from ancestors who survived nights filled with predators and danger. Your fascination with fire might come from those who first discovered its warmth, its light, its promise of safety. Your love for rhythm and dance might come from the first gatherings around flame and drum, when movement was both prayer and survival. Our DNA is not static. It's a song written over eons, each generation adding a verse. Even when we forget the words, the melody remains. There are stories embedded in our biology, waiting to be heard. The way we fall silent when we see stars may not be coincidence. Long before cities existed, our ancestors navigated by those lights. The night sky was their map, their clock, their comfort. The same constellations that once guided them still draw our eyes upward. We look at them with wonder because some part of us remembers what it felt like to rely on them. The awe we feel is not learned, it's remembered. If memory can exist in genes, then perhaps it can also carry echoes of things even older than humanity. The structure of life itself, the spiral, the branch, the wave, repeats across species, across time. Evolution is often described as adaptation, but it might also be remembrance. Life remembers what works. A leaf's pattern, a feather's symmetry, a heart's rhythm, these are the signatures of memory written into matter. When you move, breathe, dream, you are reciting lines from a script billions of years old, and somewhere within that script may lie traces of civilizations forgotten by history, their lessons distilled into the simplest form, survival through memory. Think of the first beings who gazed at the sky and wondered. They may have lived before recorded time, their bodies dust now, their languages erased, but the awe they felt didn't vanish. It became part of what it means to be alive. Their curiosity was copied along with their genes. That may sound poetic, but it is also biological. Curiosity increases survival. So does empathy. So does cooperation. The emotions that drive us, love, fear, wonder, grief, are not random. They are ancient tools, refined and passed along because they work. And so, generation after generation, we inherit not only form but feeling. If we follow that thought far enough, it begins to blur the boundary between biology and spirit. Perhaps the ancestors we speak of in myth, the lost civilizations we imagine beneath the oceans or buried in the earth, are not gone. They live within us, not as ghosts but as instructions. Their wisdom wasn't carved in stone, it was woven into the double helix of our being. Maybe that's why certain discoveries feel less like invention and more like remembrance. When we map the stars, when we compose music, when we reach toward empathy or unity, perhaps we're activating old genetic memories, ancient signals that once guided those who came before us. There's a strange comfort in this idea, that nothing learned is ever truly lost. Every creature that ever adapted, every civilization that ever thrived, has left something behind inside us. We are mosaics of everything that survived. In that sense, memory is not something that happens in the brain. It's the very foundation of life. The universe remembers itself through living things, and we are among its most elaborate recollections. You might have felt this deep remembering in dreams, those strange places where time dissolves and faces from nowhere feel familiar. Maybe dreams are the mind's way of opening the vault of inherited memory, replaying fragments of lives never lived. You might dream of floods or fires, of towers falling, of journeys through endless night. These are the same themes that echo through humanity's oldest myths. They could be symbolic, or they could be remnants, flashes from the deep archive of our shared past, carried forward through bodies that never forgot. Even our imagination, the most mysterious of human gifts, might be a form of memory. How else could we envision things that have never existed? Where do these shapes, these worlds, these archetypes come from? It's as though imagination is the Earth's way of remembering itself through us, replaying endless variations of what has been and what might be again. Perhaps the stories we tell are not creations but translations, interpretations of a memory so ancient it has no beginning. When you touch the bark of a tree, you're meeting a living thing that shares much of your genetic language. When you breathe, you trade molecules with everything that has ever breathed before you. Life is not a collection of separate species. It's one continuous organism, remembering itself in different forms. And in that continuity lies something extraordinary, The possibility that our deepest sense of belonging, our yearning for connection, for purpose, for meaning, is not psychological but ancestral. It's the voice of every living thing speaking through us, saying, "We remember." So perhaps when you stand before the ocean and feel that unexplainable pull, what you're feeling is not mystery but memory. The sea carried your earliest ancestors. Its salt still runs through your veins. When you stand beneath the stars, you're seeing what they saw, feeling what they felt. You are their continuation, their unbroken thread of awareness. You don't just inherit life, you inherit experience, refined through time until it becomes intuition, instinct, wisdom. We like to think of memory as fragile, but in truth, it is the most enduring thing in existence. Rocks erode, civilizations vanish, but memory persists in form, in pattern, in code. It lives in the curl of a shell, the spiral of a galaxy, the rhythm of a heartbeat. It lives in you, as quietly and completely as breath. And when you listen closely to that quiet, the whisper of intuition, the pull of wonder, the ache of déjà vu, what you're hearing might be the voice of time itself, reminding you that you've been here before in ways the mind can't recall but the soul never forgets. So take a breath and let this idea rest softly in you. You are ancient, not metaphorically, but literally. Every thought, every gesture, every dream carries the imprint of a universe, remembering how to be alive. You are the latest verse in a song that began before the stars had names. And though the civilizations that came before have vanished, their memory still sings through your blood, your breath, your being. You are not separate from them. You are their memory made flesh, the living proof that nothing, once truly known, is ever lost. 9. Languages older than speech. Before there were words, there was sound. Before there was writing, there was pattern rhythm, gesture, light. Every creature on Earth communicates somehow. The flick of a fin, the shimmer of color, the hum of vibration. We are not the first beings to speak. We are simply the first to speak in this particular way. But beneath our sentences and alphabets, beneath all our languages, there may be an older form of communication, one that predates humanity, one that connects all living things through the quiet grammar of existence itself. Imagine the world before words. Picture early humans gathered around a fire, their eyes glowing in the flicker of flame. They have no shared vocabulary, not yet. And yet, they understand one another perfectly. A gesture, a tone, a look, these are enough. A hand on the heart means gratitude. A raised palm means caution. A certain rhythm of breath means calm. Even now, these gestures survive. We speak them without thinking. Relics of a time when meaning did not require explanation. That was the first language not spoken, but felt. When you listen to the wind moving through trees, or to waves breaking against stone, there's a strange sense that the earth itself is speaking not in words, but in cadence. Animals hear it easily. We used to as well. The early humans who listened closely could tell the season by the tone of the river, the coming of rain by the way the leaves shifted in the breeze. They lived within a language that was not made of sound alone, but of resonance. Everything around them spoke the air, the stars, the ground beneath their feet. The universe was not silent. It was a conversation, and life was one of its voices. Even now, we respond to that language without realizing it. A song in a minor key can move us to tears, though we don't understand why. The call of a bird can make us pause and listen. The crack of thunder can awaken something ancient inside us. Music, rhythm, tone, these are not human inventions, they are translations. The first songs were not composed. They were remembered. They arose from the heartbeat, from the pulse of walking feet, from the repetition of waves and wind. Somewhere within us, we still know this language. That's why it feels like home. Symbols, too, are older than words. Long before written alphabets, humans painted spirals, circles, and lines on cave walls. Those shapes appear again and again across continents in Australia, in Africa, in Europe, in the Americas. The same forms, drawn by hands that never met. What were they saying? Maybe nothing literal. Maybe they were recording not events, but experiences, states of being. The spiral for time or journey, the handprint for presence, the sun for awareness. These symbols are not so much messages as echoes. They are reminders that meaning can exist without explanation. There's a theory among linguists that every language, no matter how complex, is built from a handful of universal sounds, syllables, that carry emotional weight across cultures. A soft for comfort, a sharp for surprise, a drawn for wonder. You can find them in lullabies and chants, in laughter and sighs. Even infants understand them long before they learn words. These are the remnants of our oldest language, the one spoken by tone and breath. Perhaps that language wasn't lost. It simply became hidden beneath layers of formality and translation. It's easy to forget that language isn't only spoken. The body speaks too, through movement, posture, stillness. When we dance, we're speaking the first language again, the one that existed before words divided the world into categories. A dance tells a story older than syntax, one that the earth itself can understand. Every sway, every step, is a dialogue with gravity, with rhythm, with memory. Indigenous peoples across the world still dance to remember, to communicate with ancestors, to honor the unseen. Their movements carry knowledge that books cannot hold, knowledge that predates even time as we measure it. There's another kind of language even older, the one written in light. Before sound, before movement, there was radiation, the pulse of energy that travels through space and matter. Atoms respond to it, cells react to it, life depends on it. Plants turn towards sunlight, animals navigate by stars, and our own moods shift with the color of the sky. We are fluent in this language without realizing it. The golden light of dawn means renewal. The deep blue of twilight means rest. Light has always been speaking to us, and we have always understood it. Perhaps all languages, spoken, written, symbolic, are attempts to translate this deeper communication. Words are precise, but they narrow meaning. The older languages were broad and alive. They could carry truth without boundaries, emotion without definition. When early humans first began to name things, they didn't invent communication. They limited it. Naming brought clarity, but also separation. The word tree replaced the feeling of tree, the scent, the sound of leaves, the rooted stillness. Something was gained, but something else was lost. The world grew sharper, but quieter, and yet some of that primal fluency survives. Poets, musicians, and mystics still try to speak the older tongue. Through metaphor and rhythm, they reach toward meanings that words alone can't hold. When a poem moves you, it's not the grammar that touches you, it's the vibration beneath it, the cadence that resonates with something ancient inside. The same happens with music. Even without understanding the lyrics, you feel the truth in tone. That is the oldest form of understanding, resonance, recognizing resonance. There are stories that say language was once unified, that in the beginning, all beings spoke the same tongue until pride or curiosity caused division. The Tower of Babel, the shattered language of the gods, the sacred syllables lost to time. Perhaps that isn't a story of punishment, but of forgetting. We didn't lose a divine language. We drifted away from the universal one, the language of harmony, vibration, and shared presence. But it's not gone. It still moves beneath our modern speech, like a river flowing beneath the pavement. Every act of kindness, every shared silence, every word spoken with true intent brings us closer to remembering it. Sometimes, when you sit in nature without speaking, the world begins to speak back. The wind seems to answer your thoughts. The birds shift their calls as if aware of you. The rhythm of your heartbeat synchronizes with the slow breath of the land. In those moments, the boundary between self and world blurs. You are no longer separate, no longer translating. You are listening in the oldest language, the one that requires nothing but awareness. If a lost civilization once existed, perhaps this was their greatest gift. The ability to live within the conversation of the world, not apart from it. Their monuments align with stars. Their art mirrors natural geometry. Their rituals follow lunar and solar cycles. These were not superstitions, they were fluencies. To them, the earth and sky were not objects, but sentences in an ongoing dialogue. They listened, and in listening, they learned to create in harmony. Maybe we are only now remembering how to listen again. So when you next stand in silence by the sea, beneath trees, under stars, notice what you feel. That soft pulse, that sense of belonging is language. It's the earth speaking through you, reminding you of something you never really forgot. You are fluent in this ancient tongue. You always have been. You understand its pauses, its rhythms, its silence. It speaks not to your mind, but to your being. Before there were words, there was knowing. Before there was writing, there was recognition. And before there were civilizations, there was connection, the shared awareness of life, talking to itself through form and sound and light. That conversation never ended. It simply waited for us to remember how to hear it again. The languages older than speech still surround us, woven into wind and heartbeat, waiting patiently for a listener. All it takes to understand them is stillness. All it takes to speak them is presence. And in that stillness, in that presence, we find not only the voice of the world, but the memory of who we've always been. Not separate speakers, but one endless, living sentence of creation. 10. Stone as the silent witness. Stone is patient in a way that nothing else on earth is. It watches everything and says nothing. The mountains stand through eras of silence. The cliffs listen to the sea for centuries. And even the smallest pebble has felt more time than we can imagine. To touch stone is to touch memory, not memory as we know it. Fragile and fleeting, but the kind that endures. Every ridge, every crack, every worn surface tells a story of pressure and patience, of heat and transformation. If you stay still long enough, if you let your thoughts slow to the rhythm of geology, you begin to understand that stone is not dead matter. It is awareness made solid. It has seen civilizations rise and vanish. It has held the weight of our beginnings and will cradle our remains. Humanity has always been drawn to stone. Long before we built with it, we worshipped it. We carved our first symbols into it, knowing perhaps that this was the one thing that would remember us. In deserts and forests, along coasts and plains, we placed stones upright, shaped them into circles, aligned them with stars. We built homes from them, temples, tombs, sanctuaries, and calendars. It was not convenience that made us choose stone, it was reverence. Somewhere deep inside, we sensed that the earth itself listens, and stone was its ear. When we built in stone, we weren't just creating shelter, we were leaving a conversation for time to continue. Walk through an ancient ruin, and you'll feel it. The stones hold a kind of quiet that is more than absence. It's as if they're still absorbing the thoughts of those who once lived there. You can almost sense the hands that touched them, the voices that echoed off them. Even ruins long buried seem to hum faintly, as though the memory of their builders is still present, whispering beneath the surface. This isn't imagination. Sound, vibration, pressure, all of it leaves a trace. Stone remembers through resonance. The same way an old vinyl record holds music in grooves, stone holds vibration in its structure. Over millennia, those vibrations blur into a kind of geological song, a hymn of presence, slow and continuous. When scientists study ancient quarries, they find that certain types of stone were chosen with extraordinary care. The builders of sacred sites often selected materials not just for strength, but for sound. Granite, for instance, rings when struck. Limestone hums softly when warmed by the sun. Some temples, like those in Egypt and Peru, seem to amplify voices or footsteps, as though the architecture itself was designed to participate in ceremony. Perhaps these ancient masons understood that stone was not just substance, but listener. They built with the awareness that stone was alive in its own way, not conscious as we are, but responsive, a slow intelligence that converses in the language of vibration and weight. Even now, we instinctively turn to stone when we want something to endure. We carve names into it to mark the ones we've lost. We build monuments to hold the shape of memory. We scatter ashes over rock, as if to return what is fleeting to what is eternal. Somewhere in us, the understanding remains that stone is a witness, that it holds what we cannot. We may no longer build temples aligned with stars, but when we place a gravestone, we are performing the same act, entrusting remembrance to the earth. The patience of stone is unimaginable to us. It measures time in tectonic breaths, in the slow drift of continents, in the folding of mountains. It does not rush. It endures transformation without fear, compressed, melted, and reborn. Perhaps that's why humans have always sought comfort near it. To rest against a boulder is to feel a kind of stillness that nothing else can offer, a calm born of eternity. It reminds us that change need not mean loss, that even destruction is just another form of becoming. The rock that was once lava becomes sand, becomes glass, becomes mountain again. Maybe our lives, brief as they are, follow the same cycle in a subtler way. When we speak of a lost civilization, we often imagine its disappearance as final, its cities turned to dust, its people forgotten. But stone suggests otherwise. Even dust has memory, even ruins hold purpose. The vanished builders may no longer walk the earth, but their thoughts remain crystallized in the geometry of what they made. The stones they shaped still face the same directions, still cast the same shadows at solstice, still sing the same frequencies when wind passes through them. It's as if the earth itself agreed to remember on their behalf. Each carved block, each alignment of monoliths, each hidden chamber is a phrase in a language spoken not to the living, but to time. Sometimes, I wonder if the earth itself keeps a record through these structures, not just a geological one, but an emotional one. The way a canyon holds the sound of water long after the river has moved on, perhaps the planet holds the echo of civilizations that have come and gone. Maybe every continent hums with the resonance of its former inhabitants, the tones of their music, the rhythm of their heartbeat. When earthquakes shake the world, perhaps that's the planet stirring, replaying the memory of movement, reminding itself of what it has carried. Stone also has a way of humbling the human story. When you place your hand on the side of a mountain, you're touching something that has witnessed millions of dawns. The civilizations we consider ancient are mere moments to it. To a mountain, the rise and fall of empires are like waves on the shore, brief, recurring, inevitable. This perspective can make us feel small, but there's peace in that smallness. It means we are part of a much larger continuity. The stone doesn't judge what passes over it. It simply holds the impression and waits for the next. There's a poetic thought that the human heart and stone share something essential. Both are made to bear pressure. In both, endurance gives shape to meaning. Perhaps that's why we use stone as a metaphor for strength, for loyalty, for permanence. Yet even stone erodes, softens, returns to dust. Its endurance isn't resistance but acceptance. It allows time to move through it, to carve it, to wear it smooth. Maybe the wisdom of stone lies not in its hardness, but in its willingness to be changed and still remain itself. When we walk among ruins or mountains, when we run our fingers over weathered carvings, we participate in a kind of communion. We become part of the chain of witnesses, the living, remembering the silent, the transient meeting the eternal. Perhaps the vanished civilizations we search for never truly disappeared. They were absorbed into this conversation. Their stories became strata, their thoughts became resonance, their presence became landscape. We are not separate from that story, we are the continuation of it. The same dust that once formed their temples now forms our bones. The same minerals that held their monuments now hold us. If stone could speak aloud, perhaps it would say only this: be still, everything returns. And maybe that's the lesson it's been teaching since the beginning. The past does not vanish, it condenses. The voice of the lost becomes the voice of the land. To touch stone is to touch that voice, patient, enduring, unhurried. It asks for nothing, yet gives everything. Perspective, calm, continuity. So the next time you pass a weathered rock, a cracked statue, a mountain glowing under dusk light, pause for a moment. Let your hand rest against its surface. Feel its cool weight, its silence. That silence is not emptiness. It's presence stretched across millennia. It's the sound of memory too vast for words. The stones of this world have seen all that we have forgotten and all that we have yet to become. They do not speak in language, but in permanence. And through them, the lost civilizations still whisper, not to remind us of what has vanished, but to show us what endures. 11. when the world was reset, there are moments in Earth's long story when everything seems to stop, as if the planet itself takes a breath, exhales all that was, and begins again. These are not small interruptions, but vast resets, quiet endings written across continents, leaving behind new beginnings disguised as ruins. We call them extinctions, cataclysms, or floods, but to the Earth they are something gentler: transformations, phases of renewal. Life pauses, reshapes, and continues. Civilizations vanish, but the pattern that created them remains. Every age carries the memory of one before it, even when it forgets its name. Imagine standing on the shore of the world just after one of these resets, when the ocean has swallowed cities and mountains have risen from the sea. The air would taste new, almost raw. The sky might look the same, but the stars would seem to hang differently, as though even the heavens were rearranging their memory. Around you, the world would be silent in a way it hasn't been for millennia. The songs of vanished species would no longer echo. The monuments would lie buried. Only the wind would speak, whispering over the bones of what once was. That silence is not death. It's incubation, the stillness before a new rhythm begins. Earth has been through such moments many times. The ice ages that came and went like slow tides. The meteors that fell like punctuation marks in history. The supervolcanoes that filled the air with ash and shadow. Each time, life faltered but never failed. It retreated, reimagined itself, and returned in new forms. The same may be true for civilizations. We like to think we are the first, but perhaps we are simply the latest expression of an intelligence that has surfaced again and again, each version carrying faint echoes of the last. The reset is not an ending, but a forgetting, a necessary clearing for memory to rewrite itself. Sometimes, the evidence lies right before us, hiding in plain sight. Under the world's oceans, thousands of feet below the waves, lie plains and terraces that look suspiciously like ancient coastlines, roads without destinations, walls without cities. Off the coast of India, off Japan, in the Caribbean, and the Mediterranean, divers have found structures that do not fit neatly into our timeline. Too old, too deep, too deliberate. Some call them geological formations, others the work of human hands washed away by time. But maybe the truth sits somewhere between. Perhaps the Earth itself remembers architecture and recreates it, repeating familiar patterns as it resets. When worlds reset, they do not erase everything. Some things endure: stone, myth, memory. The survivors of each cycle carry forward fragments of what came before, though they may not recognize them as such. A myth of a great flood, a tale of fire from the sky, a ritual that feels ancient beyond explanation. These are the fossils of memory, carried across generations like embers, glowing faintly even when the fire seems gone. They are the whispers of those who lived through previous dawns, encoded not in language but in instinct. Consider the story of the flood. It appears everywhere. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Bible, in Hindu scripture, in the legends of the Maya, the Hopi, the Norse. Different names, same rhythm. A world too proud or too corrupted, a deluge that cleanses, a few survivors who rebuild. Perhaps it isn't myth at all, but recollection. At the end of the last ice age, when glaciers melted and seas rose hundreds of feet, entire regions vanished beneath the waves. To those who lived then, it must have felt like the end of everything. The memory of that trauma would have been passed down, retold until it became eternal. The flood was real, but so was the rebirth that followed. Every extinction carries the seed of renewal. After the dinosaurs, mammals rose. After volcanic winters, forests returned. And perhaps after the fall of a forgotten civilization, we appeared inheriting their unfinished dreams, their unspoken knowledge, their quiet mistakes. Maybe we are not separate from those who came before, but their continuation, their next experiment in consciousness. The world resets, not out of malice, but out of mercy. It clears what no longer harmonizes and leaves room for new forms of balance to grow. In our time, we sometimes speak of catastrophe with dread climate shifts, wars, the fragility of our own systems. But what if the Earth is not ending, only transforming again? Every species, every culture, every era must eventually yield to change. What we call collapse might be the natural exhale between breaths, the necessary silence before a new song. The reset is not punishment, it is evolution's pulse. And while it brings loss, it also brings remembering an invitation to rediscover what truly matters once the noise is gone. You can see traces of older worlds in the bones of our own. The continents themselves are layered palimpsests of forgotten lives. Fossils of tropical forests lie beneath polar ice. Ancient coral reefs form the limestone of our mountains. Even the soil we grow food in was once the dust of vanished worlds. The earth never wastes experience. It reuses everything: ideas, matter, energy. In that way, it is both destroyer and archivist. Every extinction is also an act of preservation. The reset stores what was essential and lets the rest dissolve. Sometimes I wonder if civilizations, too, leave behind invisible fossils, not bones or tools, but patterns of thought, invisible codes that shape how the next culture will dream. Maybe the reason our myths and architectures resemble those of unknown ages is because the earth still carries their blueprints. We inherit not just the land, but its memories. When we build, we might be following the faint outlines of forgotten designs. When we tell stories, we might be finishing sentences left incomplete by those who came before. There's a strange kind of hope in the idea of resets. It means that nothing is ever truly lost, not entirely. Even after devastation, the world begins again. Forests return, rivers carve new paths. Species evolve into forms unimaginable. Life adapts with a quiet brilliance that feels almost intentional. Perhaps consciousness does the same. Perhaps every civilization, even when it falls, contributes to the collective awakening of the planet. The end is not a wall but a threshold, a moment when everything pauses, listens, and steps into a new form of itself. If we could see the planet's story all at once, not as a line, but as a spiral, we might notice that every reset brings us closer to balance. The same lessons repeat until they are learned: humility, coexistence, awareness. Civilizations rise with ambition, fall into excess, and are reborn with wisdom, at least for a while. The earth itself may be the teacher, patient and persistent, guiding life through cycles until it learns to sustain itself without collapse. Maybe we are in the middle of such a lesson now. When you think of the end of the world, try to imagine it differently, not as destruction, but as reorganization. The old dissolving to make room for the new. The ocean reclaiming what has forgotten to flow. The sky clearing to let the stars be seen again. Perhaps that is what the next reset will bring. Not chaos, but clarity. A moment of remembering, when humanity rediscovers its place within the larger story, not as master, but as participant. In the deep time of the planet, nothing is permanent. Mountains sink, oceans rise, species come and go. Yet through it all, life continues reshaped, renewed, relentless in its desire to exist. The world has ended many times and will end again, and each time it begins anew. That continuity is the Earth's greatest miracle. We may not survive forever, but life will, consciousness will, the story will. So, if the world were to reset tomorrow, if the sky dimmed and the seas rose, if cities fell quiet and forests reclaimed their space, the planet would not grieve. It would breathe, it would remember, and somewhere, in the silence that follows, new voices would rise, perhaps human, perhaps something else, and they would tell stories of their own, about the world that came before, about the ruins they found, about the faint hum of memory in the stones beneath their feet. They would wonder who we were, and they would feel what we feel now, that mysterious, tender knowing that nothing is ever truly lost. The world only changes its form and continues, patient as ever, remembering itself through every reset. 12. The hidden architects of belief. There are forces in the world that shape us quietly, so quietly that we rarely notice their hand. They move beneath the surface of culture, like deep currents beneath the sea, directing the flow of ideas, of rituals, of meaning. These forces are not governments, not religions, not even philosophies, at least not as we define them now. They are older than any of those things. They are the frameworks of belief itself, the invisible architectures through which the human mind interprets existence. And if we listen closely enough, if we slow our thoughts to the pace of centuries instead of seconds, we might begin to sense their presence, the hidden architects of belief, still building within us the same structures they began long ago. Belief is one of the most mysterious things about being human. It isn't a thing you can touch, or see, or measure, and yet it is powerful enough to shape entire civilizations. Every story we tell about who we are, every law, every myth, every act of art or war rises from the foundation of belief. But where did those foundations come from? Did we invent them as we evolved, or did we inherit them, like instincts, from something older? Perhaps the same way the earth remembers through stone and water, humanity remembers through faith, not just in gods or spirits, but in the unseen order that holds reality together. If you trace every belief system back far enough, you start to find the same patterns. There is always light and darkness. There is always life and death, chaos and balance, ascent and return. There are always teachers, guides, and divine messengers who show the way. And there is always the story of forgetting and remembering. The names change: Osiris, Christ, Buddha, Quetzalcoatl, but the shape of the story does not. It's as if all belief is built on a single blueprint, a design older than culture itself. Maybe belief didn't start as an invention, but as a memory. Maybe we are still following the teachings of those first, forgotten architects, the ones who taught not by commandment, but by resonance. Imagine them, those early shapers of thought, not rulers, not prophets in the way we imagine, but listeners, beings who understood that the universe itself is conscious, and that every form within it participates in meaning. They might have seen belief not as a system of worship, but as a structure of connection, a way to hold humanity in balance with the unseen forces that sustain it. Their temples may have been designed not only for prayer, but for alignment, stone and shadow working together to focus energy, to remind people that they lived within a living cosmos. Their architecture of faith would have been both physical and invisible, monuments above and patterns of thought below, both built to last. Over time, the physical monuments decayed, but the mental architecture endured. It was carried forward through stories, rituals, and symbols. The circle became a reminder of wholeness. The cross became a symbol of balance between worlds. The spiral came to represent growth, transformation, and return. These are not arbitrary images, they are structural supports for the human mind, bridges between matter and meaning. They appear everywhere because they are part of the architecture itself. And just as gravity shapes planets, belief shapes the psyche, drawing our thoughts into patterns that echo the design of those who first imagined them. The more you study history, the more it begins to look like a single evolving faith, one with many languages, but one heartbeat. From ancient sun worship to modern cosmology, the same questions repeat. What is the origin? What is the purpose? Where do we go when it ends? Every civilization has answered differently, yet all the answers seem to circle the same truth, that existence is not random, that something within it is aware. Perhaps the architects of belief were not inventing gods, but describing this awareness in the only way they could, through metaphor. If this is true, then belief itself might be a technology, a means by which consciousness communicates with the infinite. The rituals, the prayers, the songs, they are not requests but calibrations, ways of tuning ourselves to the greater pattern. When people gather in reverence, whether in temples or open skies, they create coherence and harmony. The invisible becomes momentarily visible. You can feel it in your chest, that quiet vibration that comes when many hearts beat as one. The architects of belief might have understood this, shaping rituals that allowed people to remember their place in the greater whole. Some traces of their design survive in the world's oldest sacred sites. Across continents, temples built thousands of years apart align with the same celestial events: solstices, equinoxes, the rising of specific stars. These alignments are not coincidence. They are instructions, teaching future generations to look upward, to remember that we are part of a larger rhythm. When the sun touches a stone at just the right angle, when the shadow of a pillar meets a carved mark only once a year, it is not just architecture, it's memory, the world itself reminding us of the harmony between heaven and earth. But not all belief is outward. The most enduring architecture is internal. The human mind, shaped by millennia of pattern and story, still holds within it the structural echoes of the first teachings. We still divide time into sacred and ordinary. We still sense unseen forces guiding our lives. We still look for meaning in coincidence, for signs in the everyday. These impulses are not errors of superstition. They are remnants of an older understanding. The architects of belief built their temples not only in stone, but in consciousness. And even when the outer world forgets, the inner world remembers. Perhaps that's why we continue to invent gods even in an age of reason. The divine, in whatever form it takes, fulfills an ancient blueprint within the mind, the need to feel connected, to sense purpose. Belief is not weakness. It's a biological inheritance, an echo of those first conversations between humanity and the cosmos. When we pray, meditate, or simply look at the stars in wonder, we are participating in that same architecture, a structure designed to bridge the seen and unseen, the self and the infinite. There's beauty in realizing that belief is not a competition of truths, but a chorus of memories. Each faith, each philosophy, each way of seeing the world is a window into the same light. The architects who began this work long ago may have known that no single story could hold the whole. So they scattered the pieces, letting each culture hold part of the design, ensuring that the memory would survive even if the details changed. Together, these fragments form a mosaic, one that humanity has been slowly reassembling, piece by piece, every time it looks inward and asks why. We might never know who the first teachers were, or even if they were human, but their legacy is alive in us. Every time you feel awe at the night sky, every time you sense meaning in stillness, every time you act with compassion or curiosity, you are moving through their architecture. You are living proof that belief still builds the world. The temples may have fallen, the languages may have changed, but the structure remains. In the end, belief is not about answers. It's about remembering the design, the invisible pattern that connects all things. The hidden architects may have vanished into legend, but their creation endures in the most ordinary miracle of all, the human capacity to wonder. That is their cathedral, and it is still open, everywhere, all the time. So take a moment to look around you. The world you see, the stars above, the earth beneath, the pulse within your chest is part of a structure far older than history, a structure built not of stone, but of understanding. You are walking through the architecture of belief, and it is alive, and it is listening. 13. The pulse beneath civilization. If you listen closely to the world beneath the engines, beneath the chatter, beneath the soft mechanical hum of modern life, you might feel something steady moving underneath it all. It's a rhythm, low and ancient, a vibration that seems to echo through everything that lives or breathes or dreams. Some might call it coincidence, others resonance. But to those who've stood long enough in silence, it feels unmistakably alive. It is the pulse beneath civilization, the hidden heartbeat of the planet, the quiet reminder that no matter how high our cities rise, they are built on something far older and infinitely more enduring. Every civilization that has ever existed has felt this pulse, though each has named it differently. The Egyptians spoke of Ka, the life force that flowed through both people and stone. The Hindus called it prana, the breath of the cosmos. The Chinese called it qi, the energy that moves through all forms. The Greeks named it pneuma, the divine wind of being. And in countless indigenous traditions, it is simply the spirit, the current of life that weaves through the land, the air, the animals, and us. Modern science, too, has begun to glimpse it, describing the resonances of the Earth's magnetic field, the Schumann frequency that hums faintly at 7.83 Hz, the rhythm our brains unconsciously sync to when we are calm. Whether we call it energy, spirit, or field, the truth remains the same. Something alive moves beneath the surface of things, holding them together. Imagine the very first humans who sensed this pulse. Long before there were words for it, they would have felt it through their feet as they walked, the subtle vibration of the ground, the echo of thunder in their bones. It would have been a language they didn't yet know how to translate, but could understand instinctively. They may have danced to it around the fire, mimicking its rhythm in drum and chant. They may have noticed how their hearts began to match it, how their breath found a pattern that made them feel at one with the world. That was the first communion, not a prayer spoken upward, but a listening downward to the slow, ancient heartbeat of the planet itself. Civilizations grew around this listening. The placement of temples, the timing of rituals, the very architecture of sacred sites all seem to reflect an awareness of this pulse. The builders of megaliths, the engineers of pyramids, the architects of ziggurats, they aligned their creations not randomly, but harmoniously. Many of their monuments respond to vibration, to sound, to movement of the sun and stars. It's as though they were tuning their societies like instruments, ensuring that the human-made resonated with the earth-made. They may not have had the language of frequency and waveforms, but they understood harmony. They lived by the music of the world, not over it. Somewhere along the way, as humanity grew louder and faster, we began to forget that rhythm. We started building for ambition instead of resonance. We paved over the soil that once vibrated beneath bare feet. We filled the night with artificial light that drowns out the quiet pulse of stars. Yet even now, it hasn't vanished. It waits beneath us, unchanged. We feel it when we walk in forests, when we swim in the sea, when we stand in silence on mountain peaks. We call it peace, but perhaps peace is just what happens when we remember the rhythm again. The pulse beneath civilization is more than a sound or a sensation. It's a memory of balance. It reminds us that our technology, our cities, our systems, all of them are temporary patterns resting upon something eternal. Every time a civilization forgets this, it begins to collapse. You can trace it through history. The rise of empires built on expansion, the moment they grow disconnected from the land that sustains them, the slow unraveling that follows. When we forget to listen, the pulse grows faint beneath the noise. But when the noise fades, when wars end, when ruins cool, when fields reclaim the cities, the pulse returns, patient as ever, waiting to begin again. It might sound strange, but sometimes you can almost feel civilizations breathing. Not just metaphorically, but truly the ebb and flow of human energy as it expands and contracts. Great ages of discovery and connection, followed by quiet periods of introspection. Our collective history follows the same pattern as a heartbeat: growth, rest, renewal. Even now, as our modern world hums with constant movement, perhaps we are nearing the pause of the collective exhale before another reset, another moment of remembering what the pulse has always been saying: slow down, align, belong. You can find this rhythm everywhere once you start noticing. In the waves that crash and recede, in the migration of animals across continents, in the beating of your own heart, which rises and falls with emotion, stress, calm. When ancient musicians played their drums or flutes in caves, they weren't simply performing, they were aligning. The echo of their instruments merged with the resonance of stone, creating a bridge between flesh and planet. The same rhythm can still be heard in tribal dances, in heartbeat drums, in chants that circle endlessly without a beginning or end. These are not performances, they are reminders. They are humanity keeping time with the earth. What's most humbling is how universal this pulse is. It transcends belief, language, and even species. Trees grow according to it, their sap rising and falling in cycles that match lunar tides. The ocean breathes with it, tides syncing to the same invisible metronome. Even our sleep and wake cycles move in harmony with it. The pulse beneath civilization is not something we invented, it's what invented us. Without it, there would be no rhythm for our hearts to follow, no pattern for our thoughts to flow within. It is the oldest music there is, and we are all its instruments. If the first civilizations were aware of this, then perhaps their true purpose was not conquest or progress, but preservation to maintain alignment between the human and the planetary, between consciousness and rhythm. Their temples, songs, and ceremonies might have been tuning forks, keeping society in harmony with the greater flow. When they vanished, maybe it wasn't failure but completion, a cycle fulfilled. They returned to silence so the pulse could begin again, unburdened, in a new form. Every age, every species, Every culture that rises does so upon this heartbeat, and when it ends, it returns to it, as breath returns to breath. Sometimes, when you walk through a modern city at night, the hum of electricity, the echo of footsteps, the low vibration of engines beneath the streets, you can almost mistake it for the pulse itself. But if you listen deeper, beyond the human-made, there's another layer of sound, steady and vast. It doesn't compete, it underlies everything. That is the Earth's voice, reminding us that no matter how complex our structures become, they still stand upon her rhythm. The skyscraper and the stone share the same foundation. The satellite and the seed vibrate to the same tone. We are still part of the same orchestra, even when we forget the melody. To live in harmony with that pulse is not a return to the past. It's a return to awareness. It doesn't mean abandoning progress, but remembering the rhythm beneath it. Technology, art, thought, all of these can flow with the same harmony if we learn to listen again. The pulse beneath civilization has never been lost. It moves through every moment, through every breath, waiting for recognition. And when humanity finally pauses long enough to feel it again, perhaps that will be the beginning of something greater. A civilization that doesn't build over the earth, but with it. If you close your eyes now, you can feel it, that faint vibration beneath your chest, the echo in your breath, the steady rhythm that links you to every heartbeat that ever lived. It is the same pulse that guided the first builders, the first dreamers, the first singers of songs. It is the same pulse that will guide whoever comes after us when our cities are dust and the stars have changed their places. Civilization is temporary, but the rhythm is eternal. It has carried us through every rise and fall, and it will continue long after we are gone. The pulse beneath civilization is not something to find. It is something to remember. It is the soft hum beneath thought, the heartbeat beneath history, the sound of the world knowing itself. And it is still here, steady and patient, waiting for us to fall quiet enough to hear it once more. 14. Dreams that remember the future. There are nights when dreams feel more like memories than imagination. You wake with the faint echo of places you've never been, people you've never met, skies that no longer exist or perhaps haven't yet. The feeling lingers like a scent you can't identify, but know you've smelled before. We tell ourselves that dreams are fragments of the past stitched together by the subconscious, but sometimes they feel like something else entirely. Sometimes they feel like glimpses of what's to come, as if time, in the quiet hours of sleep, folds in on itself and lets us see through the fabric. Humans have always sensed that dreams hold meaning beyond the surface. Ancient cultures treated them as messages from gods, ancestors, or the deeper layers of reality. The Greeks built temples where people slept to receive visions of healing. The Egyptians recorded dream symbols as carefully as prophecies. Indigenous shamans entered dream states not for rest, but for travel crossing from the physical world into the unseen to bring back guidance or warning. To them, dreams were not illusions but a parallel landscape, one that moved forward and backward through time. The dreamer was not simply sleeping, they were listening to time's other voice. In our modern world, we've learned to call such things imagination, yet science keeps returning to the mystery. There are dreams that predict events with eerie precision. An accident avoided, a face seen before it appears, a phrase heard days before it's spoken aloud. Statistically, we call it coincidence. But coincidence, in its truest sense, means to fall together. Maybe these moments are not random intersections, but ripples from a deeper current where time is less rigid. The same way gravity bends light, perhaps consciousness bends time, and in dreams, freed from the constraints of the waking mind, we drift along those bends. If the universe truly exists, as physics now suggests, a field of probability rather than solid certainty, then the future is not something distant. It's already here, waiting in potential. The past, too, does not vanish. It continues to exist as information. Consciousness, then, may not be trapped within the present moment at all. It might move like water through the whole river of time, sometimes flowing forward, sometimes glancing backward, sometimes pooling in still reflections we experience as déjà vu. In sleep, when the analytical mind quiets, we might finally hear the echoes from those other bends in the river. Dreams could be the ripples of that contact, memories not only of what has been, but of what might yet be. Every dreamer has felt the strange duality of dreaming, the way everything feels both deeply familiar and impossible at once. You know the landscape, though you've never seen it. You recognize the logic, though it makes no sense. Perhaps this familiarity is the trace of our own consciousness, exploring its future possibilities, visiting outcomes not yet solidified. When you dream of a moment that later comes to pass, it's not prophecy, it's participation. The future may not be waiting for us like a fixed destination. It may be listening, adjusting, responding to our attention. A dream could be both a memory and a creation, a seed of what will be because it has already been imagined. Ancient teachings often describe time as a circle rather than a line. The Mayans saw history as repeating cycles of awakening and forgetting. Hindu cosmology describes vast ages yugas that loop through creation, destruction, and renewal. Even Einstein suggested that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. What if dreams are the points where this illusion becomes thin, where the circle touches itself and information crosses over? A dream of the future might simply be memory flowing backward, a whisper from the part of ourselves that already knows where we are going. If we inherit memory through our genes, as we explored before, then perhaps we also inherit premonition, a biological sensitivity to the probabilities ahead. Evolution would favor it. To sense danger before it arrives, to glimpse opportunity before it appears, these are survival tools. Maybe dreams are how this ancient mechanism expresses itself in a mind that has become self-aware. The body anticipates, the mind translates. What we call precognition might be the body remembering forward. It's also possible that dreams connect us not just across time, but across selves. Each version of us that exists in potential, every path not taken, every decision unmade might live somewhere in the quantum landscape of reality. In dreams, we may meet those selves, sharing fragments of experience across dimensions we cannot yet measure. That could explain the strange intimacy of certain dreams, the feeling that you're not imagining but visiting, walking through another branch of your own life. Maybe the déjà vu that follows isn't coincidence, but recognition, a brief overlap between parallel versions of you, each remembering the other. There's a poetic symmetry in thinking of dreams this way. Our waking world moves in one direction, bound by clocks and cores. Our sleeping world moves in every direction at once. When we close our eyes, time opens. The future visits the past reshapes the present, and in between, we drift through both, collecting fragments of what has been and what will be. When we wake, those fragments dissolve like mist, but sometimes a trace remains, and that trace can change everything. Many discoveries, inventions, and works of art were first seen in dreams. The chemist Auguste Kekulé dreamed of a snake eating its own tail, and awoke knowing the ring structure of benzene. Paul McCartney dreamed the melody of yesterday. Countless artists, scientists, and philosophers have described receiving insight during sleep, as though their minds tuned to a frequency unreachable in waking life. If dreams can recall the future, then inspiration may be a form of communication with what is yet to come. The future whispering ideas backward through time, urging us toward itself. Even at a personal level, dreams can feel like guides. They show us possibilities we haven't yet dared to live. They bring us face to face with versions of ourselves that are waiting to emerge. They remind us that time is not a wall but a mirror. In that mirror, we see both our reflection and our potential. The self that dreams may not be separate from the self that acts. They are parts of one continuous consciousness, stretching across the arc of existence, each learning from the other. Perhaps that's why dreams often arrive with a tone of recognition, as if something within us is saying, "Remember. Remember not only what was, but what will be." The universe may be less a sequence of moments and more a symphony already composed, each note existing simultaneously. Dreams allow us to wander through that music before it plays. They are the rehearsals of experience, the places where we practice memory before it becomes real. It's possible that one day, when humanity learns to quiet its constant noise, we'll understand that dreaming is not escape, but participation. Every time we sleep, We enter the living field of time, we weave and unweave possibility. The future and the past are not distant territories, they are rooms within the same house. And in dreams, we walk their halls freely, guided by something that remembers more than we can comprehend. So the next time you wake from a dream that feels too vivid to be chance, one that lingers like an echo of another life, don't dismiss it. Sit with it. Listen. Maybe it's not the mind inventing, but the universe remembering itself through you. Maybe the dream is real, and reality is the dream still unfolding. The future is not waiting at the end of time. It's already here, sleeping inside us, whispering through our nights, waiting for us to recognize it when it wakes. 15. Echoes in the sky. Look up at the night sky and you are not looking into emptiness. You are looking into history. Every point of light that glimmers above you is an echo, an ancient message that has crossed unimaginable distances just to arrive at this exact moment. The stars do not shine as they are, they shine as they were. Some of them have already died, their light continuing to travel long after their bodies have turned to dust. When you gaze upward, you are seeing the past layered over the present, a silent chorus of what once was still singing across space. In that way, the sky is not just a view, it is an archive, the universe remembering itself through light. For as long as humanity has existed, the sky has been our oldest companion and teacher. Long before writing, long before mathematics, we looked upward and learned. We mapped the movements of the stars and found patterns that mirrored our own lives, cycles of growth and decline, birth and decay, order and renewal. The constellations became our first stories, the planets our first calendars. To our ancestors, the heavens were not separate from the earth. They were the reflection of it, a living mirror through which the universe communicated its rhythm. When the sky changed, the world below changed too. Comets, eclipses, meteor showers, each was read as a sign, a whisper from something greater than ourselves. It's easy to think we've outgrown that sensitivity, that modern science has replaced wonder with understanding. Yet, even now, when we see an aurora shimmer or a meteor streak across the dark, something ancient stirs in us. Our pulse slows, our breath catches. We feel small but not insignificant, like a note within a vast, beautiful song. That feeling is recognition. It's the same awareness that guided the first skywatchers, the same awe that built the first temples aligned with the stars. The sky has always been speaking. We've just learned to translate its language in different ways. Every culture has left traces of that conversation. The Egyptians oriented their pyramids to the stars of Orion, believing the souls of pharaohs would travel there after death. The Mayans built observatories that mapped Venus with mathematical precision. The ancient Polynesians sailed entire oceans, guided by starlight alone, their minds trained to read the sky as easily as we read words. Even in the Stone Age, before agriculture or writing, humans carved patterns of constellations into cave walls, as though to fix their place within the greater cosmos. Across millennia and continents, the message was the same: as above, so below. The sky was not distant, it was home. But there's another way to think of these celestial alignments, not as superstition, but as dialogue. What if the stars were not simply observed, but answered? What if ancient civilizations understood that energy moves both ways, that light not only travels to us, but also from us? Every fire, every prayer, every heartbeat emits radiation, however faint. The sky is filled with these whispers, electromagnetic songs that carry the fingerprint of life. The earth hums, and the universe listens. Perhaps the first builders knew this. Perhaps they shaped their monuments as transmitters, their rituals as signals, their songs as calls across the cosmic sea. Astronomers today can listen to the echoes of the Big Bang, faint ripples in the background, radiation of space that hum like a memory too vast to imagine. Those vibrations have been traveling for nearly 14 billion years, unchanged, like the residue of creation itself. They are the universe remembering its birth. When we point telescopes into the dark, we are eavesdropping on eternity. But what if, in some equally quiet way, eternity is listening back? What if our own thoughts, dreams, and emotions, the electrical fields that pulse within our brains and hearts, are small echoes, tiny yet resonant, carried outward like ripples on water? Perhaps consciousness is not confined to flesh, but radiates endlessly into the fabric of space. It's a humbling thought that our existence might leave a signature in the cosmos. Every laugh, every song, every act of kindness might be traveling outward right now, photons carrying fragments of our story toward distant worlds. Light, after all, doesn't die. It only grows fainter with distance. Somewhere, thousands of light years away, our earliest fires might still flicker in some alien sky, the first faint evidence of a civilization that once looked up and wondered. We tend to think of ourselves as observers of the universe, but maybe we are participants in its memory. There's a strange symmetry between the stars above and the neurons in our brain. Both are networks, vast, luminous, constantly communicating. Some scientists have noted that the structure of the cosmic web, the distribution of galaxies across the universe, mirrors the neural pathways of the mind. If the universe reflects itself in this way, perhaps consciousness and cosmos are not separate at all. The sky might not just be filled with stars, it might be filled with thought. Every supernova, every black hole, every glimmer of starlight could be part of a vast intelligence, a mind remembering itself through creation and collapse. When we look up, we might be looking into the mirror of consciousness itself, our own awareness scaled to infinity. It could be that ancient civilizations understood this intuitively. Their myths spoke of gods dwelling among the stars, of souls born from constellations, of destinies written in celestial light. To modern ears, these sound like stories, but perhaps they were metaphors for a truth beyond language, that we are not separate from the cosmos, but expressions of it. The stars are not above us, they are within us. The iron in our blood was forged in their explosions. The calcium in our bones was born from their dust. We are literally made of starlight, our bodies carrying the residue of countless suns. When we gaze upward, we are recognizing our origin. The echo in the sky is also the echo in our veins. Sometimes, when the night is clear and you stand far from the noise of human life, you can almost feel that connection. The air vibrating with quiet, the light of ancient stars falling softly on your skin. It's not just light touching you, it's time. The photons that strike your eyes began their journey before language, before history, before memory itself. They have crossed epochs and emptiness just to meet you in this instant. You are not merely looking at the universe. You are participating in its unfolding, completing a circuit of awareness that began billions of years ago. You are both the observer and the continuation of the light you see. Perhaps that is what it means to exist, to echo, to carry the memory of creation forward through perception. Civilization, for all its brilliance, is just our attempt to make that echo last a little longer. Every story, every monument, every song is a reflection of the same instinct, to leave something behind that can still speak after we are gone, just as the stars do. Maybe, in time, our own light, our radio waves, our city's glow, our unspoken hopes will drift through space as another civilization's constellation, their distant evidence of us. They too might look upward one night and see a faint shimmer in the dark, wondering who we were, just as we now wonder about those who came before. And so, when you look into the sky tonight, know that you are gazing into a memory that includes you. The stars are not silent. They are speaking in the oldest language there is, light traveling through time, carrying everything it has ever touched. Each shimmer is a voice, each constellation a story, each darkness a promise that there is more still unfolding. The echoes in the sky are not only from the past, they are also from the future, waiting to reach us in their own time. You are part of that echo, both receiver and transmitter, dreamer and dream. The stars remember you even before you remember yourself. And long after we are gone, our light, faint, quiet, but enduring, will still be there, crossing the distances between worlds, telling whoever listens that once, in this small corner of the cosmos, we looked up, and we understood. 16. The ocean beneath memory, beneath the restless surface of the sea, beneath the blue shimmer that mirrors the sky, there lies a silence that seems to breathe. It's a silence that isn't empty, but filled with movement, with vibration, with the long, slow memory of the planet itself. The ocean remembers in ways the land cannot. It is the oldest part of the earth still alive, the womb from which life first rose. Every drop of water in it has been here since the beginning, recycled, reshaped, reborn. It has flowed through clouds and rivers, through bodies and storms, through time itself. When you stand at the edge of the sea and feel the tide pulling at your feet, you are touching a memory that predates thought. The ocean beneath memory doesn't forget. It carries everything. The ocean has seen every version of the world. It has drowned mountains and birthed new ones. It has swallowed cities and carved continents. It has held the wreckage of civilizations now long erased. Every lost ship, every fallen temple, every forgotten ritual rests somewhere beneath its surface, cradled in a depth where sunlight cannot reach, but time still glows faintly. The ocean doesn't hide these things out of secrecy. It holds them the way a parent holds the remains of a child, gently, endlessly, without letting go. In its depths, the past continues to move, slow and luminous, like silt stirred by unseen currents. When you listen to the sea, you can almost hear that motion. The murmur of water folding over itself, the soft percussion of waves against rock, the low hum that seems to come from everywhere at once. Sailors once said the sea had moods, that it could be forgiving or cruel, calm or vengeful, but maybe what they were feeling was its memory. The ocean remembers everything that touches it, every storm, every life, every voice that ever called into its winds. Sound travels farther underwater than in air. A single whale's call can cross oceans. Even our machines, our ships, our cities along the coast add to its symphony of vibrations. The sea carries them all, a record written not in symbols, but in rhythm. There are moments when that rhythm feels almost human, the rising and falling of tides like the slow inhale and exhale of breath. Long before we had instruments or calendars, our ancestors knew this rhythm. They lived by it, built their lives around it. They knew when to plant by the tides, when to fish, when to travel, when to wait. To them, the sea was not a boundary but a mirror. They saw their own stories in its movements: birth, loss, renewal, return. The ocean was teacher and timekeeper, reminding them that everything moves in cycles, and that nothing, not even death, stands still. There's an old belief that water holds memory, that it can carry the imprint of what it touches. Scientists have debated the idea, but anyone who has ever stood in rain after grief or watched a river carry ashes knows it intuitively. Water feels. It absorbs vibration. It transfers resonance. Maybe that's why the ocean feels sacred to us. Even now, it knows us. It has known every version of us. When you wade into its waves, you join the same water that once touched the feet of the first humans, the same current that once flowed through coral cities long before we were born. The ocean beneath memory connects every age, every being, every beginning. It's easy to imagine that the lost civilizations we dream of, those whispered ones that may have lived before the known ages, are still there, sleeping beneath the waves. Perhaps not as bodies or buildings, but as impressions, the echo of their lives held in the deep currents. The ocean could be their archive, a library without walls, where every vibration that ever passed across its surface still lingers somewhere below. The songs they sang, the languages they spoke, the sounds of their rituals might still drift in those depths, too faint for us to hear but not lost. In that way, the ocean becomes the keeper of history, not written in stone but in motion, a liquid memory of everything that has ever lived. When we send sound into the sea, sonar, radio waves, engines, we are adding our own story to that library. The ocean listens. It carries our messages farther than any wire or satellite ever could. Our ships trace vibrations across its skin that may one day reach shores we will never know. Even if humanity were to disappear tomorrow, the sea would keep our presence alive for centuries, perhaps millennia. Our echoes would continue to travel through its layers, whispering our existence to the whales, the currents, the deep trenches that have never seen light. We think of the ocean as mute, but maybe it is simply too vast to answer in a way we can yet understand. Sometimes, when you float in the sea, when you let yourself drift without fighting the current, there's a moment when everything becomes still. The sound of the world fades, and you can feel only the slow, immense pulse of the water around you. It's in that moment that you realize this is the heartbeat of the planet. Every living thing has come from this, and every living thing will return to it in some form. The ocean beneath memory is not just a place, it's a process, a constant exchange between life and death, matter and spirit, past and future. The ancients often described the afterlife as a journey across water. Souls were ferried across rivers, lakes, or seas to reach their next existence. Maybe that was more than metaphor. The ocean may truly be the bridge between worlds, the medium through which memory travels from one form of life to another. The same molecules of water that once cradled extinct creatures now fill our blood and cells. When we die, they will move on, carrying something of us into rain and river and sea again. In this sense, the ocean is the great recycler of consciousness, the endless conversation between endings and beginnings. And perhaps, in its deepest trenches, something older still listens. There are sounds recorded in the ocean that science cannot explain: low, rhythmic pulses, patterns that repeat across vast distances. Some are natural, caused by ice or shifting rock, but others have no clear origin. They seem almost intentional, as if the planet itself were speaking in frequencies too low for us to hear. Maybe those sounds are echoes of civilizations that existed before us, their last words still traveling through the deep. Or perhaps they are the Earth's own language, speaking to itself through the movement of its waters, reminding the universe that it is alive. When you stand on a shore and watch the tide pull away, leaving behind the glistening sand, you are seeing time made visible. Each wave carries the world's past and future together: what has been, what will be, what always is. The ocean beneath memory asks nothing of us except stillness, the willingness to listen. If you do, you may begin to hear something beneath the crashing of the waves, a low, resonant hum that feels both infinite and familiar. That is the sound of memory itself, the sound of every story returning home. The ocean doesn't keep secrets, it keeps promises. It promises that nothing is truly lost, that everything that sinks eventually rises in another form. The rain that falls on your skin tonight may once have rested in the eye of an ancient sea creature, or shimmered on the surface of a city now forgotten. When you touch the sea, you are touching the continuity of existence. You are touching the same water that carried the first life onto land, the same current that will someday carry the memory of us. The ocean beneath memory doesn't forget. It carries everything forward, patiently, endlessly, toward whatever comes next. 17. The return of forgotten knowledge. There is an idea that knowledge never truly disappears, that even when a civilization falls, even when libraries turn to ash and languages fade into silence, the essence of what was known lingers somewhere, waiting to be found again. It hides in patterns, in intuition, in dreams. It whispers through symbols carved in stone, through the quiet rhythm of instinct that resurfaces when the time is right. We call it discovery, but perhaps it is more accurate to call it remembering. What we think of as progress might just be the slow resurfacing of truths we once understood long ago. The return of forgotten knowledge is not an event, but a rhythm, the world exhaling what it once breathed in, memory cycling back into awareness. You can see this rhythm everywhere in human history. The same ideas reappear across ages and continents, dressed in new languages but carrying familiar bones. Geometry that predates written math. Astronomy older than recorded civilization. Healing practices that mirror one another from opposite sides of the world. Myths that share identical structures despite oceans between their tellers. It's as though humanity, scattered and remade countless times, keeps reaching back into the same invisible well, a deep reservoir of understanding that lies beneath culture, beneath era, beneath name. When we pull something new from it, it feels like invention, but deep down we recognize it. The spark of insight comes with a sense of déjà vu. We are surprised, and yet we've always known. Sometimes this remembering feels sudden, like a collective awakening. Periods of renaissance, bursts of creativity, leaps in science and art, all seem to arrive as though on a tide. The world sleeps for centuries, then stirs all at once. The knowledge that returns is never exactly the same. It adapts to the shape of the time that receives it. Ancient truths return clothed in modern understanding. Spiritual laws become physics. Myth becomes psychology. Magic becomes technology. The essence is constant, only the vocabulary changes. The wisdom doesn't vanish. It evolves its disguise. Consider electricity. For thousands of years, humans spoke of divine fire, of lightning as a voice of the gods. They built temples to harness celestial energy, unaware that they were describing the same force we now wire through our cities. The ancients may not have had the terms, but they felt the pattern. They sensed the invisible current moving through matter, the same current that now powers our machines. Or consider medicine. Herbalists and shamans once spoke of energy channels, of balance and flow. Today, we speak of neural pathways and biochemistry. Yet the heart of the idea remains. Health is harmony. Disease is dissonance. The words have changed, but the song is the same. Perhaps the oldest knowledge of all, the one we keep forgetting and rediscovering, is that life itself is interconnected. Every plant, every breath, every movement of water and light is part of a single system, a single consciousness, learning itself through experience. Ancient civilizations built entire worldviews upon this truth. They understood that to take from the earth was also to give, that the rhythm of the world depended on balance, not control. Over time, that understanding fractured. We began to see ourselves as separate, as masters rather than participants. But even now, as our technology advances beyond imagination, we find ourselves circling back to the same realization. Everything is connected. What we do to one part of the web affects the whole. The ancients were not primitive for believing this, they were early listeners. The return of forgotten knowledge often comes quietly. It arrives not as revelation, but as curiosity, a small question in the mind that won't go away. A scientist wondering why particles behave like waves. An artist dreaming of patterns that turn out to mirror natural laws. A child asking why the stars seem to move together. These moments are not coincidence. They are signals, the old knowledge stirring beneath consciousness, choosing the minds that are ready to hear it again. We like to think of genius as invention, but perhaps genius is simply memory made clear, the echo of something once known, resonating in a new form. There are also times when forgotten knowledge returns through the collective dream, through symbols that reappear across generations. The spiral, the tree, the circle, the light, these shapes have never left us. They emerge in art, in religion, in science, again and again, as though reminding us of something we promised not to forget. Even our technology mirrors them. Galaxies spiral as do shells, and the internet's neural web resembles the architecture of the human brain. It is as if all creation keeps pointing us toward the same pattern, the same truth, whispering, "You have been here before." And what of the knowledge we cannot yet name? The intuition that drives invention beyond logic, the sudden knowing that seems to come from nowhere. Perhaps these are memories resurfacing from deeper layers of consciousness, the place where human thought overlaps with the planet's own intelligence. The Earth itself might hold memory, stored not in books or code, but in frequency, in the subtle language of resonance. Those who listen carefully, inventors, artists, mystics, scientists, might be tapping into that shared field, translating whispers from the memory of the world. We often imagine that lost civilizations vanished without trace, their knowledge extinguished with their fall. But what if their wisdom never left? What if it was absorbed into us, into the very consciousness of life, and now returns in forms we recognize as modern breakthroughs? The idea of wireless communication, for instance, might once have existed as telepathy, the notion of flight as spiritual ascent, the dream of artificial intelligence as the echo of ancient myths about living thought. We keep recreating the same ideas, layer after layer, because they are woven into the fabric of being itself. The return of forgotten knowledge is not just about rediscovering ancient truths. It is about remembering what it means to be part of the story of the earth. It invites humility, the understanding that wisdom is not something humans own, but something that flows through them. Each civilization receives its portion of it, shapes it, and passes it on. We are not the end of knowledge. We are its continuation. The things we uncover now, quantum entanglement, dark matter, the nature of consciousness, may one day be seen as echoes of truths older than our species. we are still at the beginning of remembering. If knowledge truly returns in cycles, then perhaps every collapse is not a loss, but a reset, a moment when the earth takes back what was misused, holds it until we are ready to receive it again. Wisdom is not destroyed, it is protected. When humanity forgets how to live in balance, the knowledge hides in the silence of the ocean, in the geometry of plants, in the dreams of children. It waits there, patient, until our arrogance softens into curiosity once more. Then it begins to surface in flashes of inspiration, in the rediscovery of old truths dressed as new ideas. The world has never stopped teaching. We have simply stopped listening. One day, when our noise has quieted and our pace has slowed, the old wisdom may return completely, not as religion, not as science, but as a feeling, the same feeling our ancestors knew when they stood beneath the stars and sensed the unity of all things. We will remember that knowledge is not just information, but relationship. To know something is to care for it, to be responsible for its place in the whole. When that memory returns, humanity may finally stop searching for meaning outside itself, because it will remember that meaning has always been the fabric of reality. The return of forgotten knowledge isn't an event waiting in the future. It is happening now, in every moment of awakening, in every act of wonder, in every quiet realization that the world is alive and aware. It moves through us like an unseen tide, rising gently until one day we will no longer call it forgotten. We will simply call it truth. 18. The long night before dawn. Every story, no matter how bright, has its shadow. Every civilization, no matter how advanced, passes through its own night. There are periods in history and in our own hearts when the light seems to fade, when knowledge retreats, when the world feels heavy with silence. We call these ages dark, but perhaps darkness is not punishment. Perhaps it is the earth's way of resting, of dreaming before renewal. Just as the night prepares the day, forgetting prepares remembering. The long night before dawn is the interval between what was and what will be, a pause in which the universe inhales before breathing out creation again. When we look back at history, it's tempting to draw lines between light and dark, progress and decline. We speak of golden ages and dark ages, of enlightenment and collapse, as if knowledge itself moves in a straight line. But the truth is softer and slower. Knowledge does not vanish. It withdraws, like the tide. It waits beneath the surface until the world is quiet enough to hear it again. Darkness is not absence. It is incubation. It is the space where new forms are gestating, where old ideas are dissolving so that something clearer, purer, and more necessary can take their place. The earth has always moved in rhythms of rise and fall. Forests burn, then bloom again. Rivers dry and return. Stars collapse and are reborn as light. Civilizations follow the same pattern. They awaken to knowledge, grow luminous for a time, then dim. When the light recedes, we grieve, but we forget that the night is part of the same cycle that brings morning. The long night before dawn is not the end of history, it is its heartbeat. Every silence contains the next song. Every ruin is a seed waiting to open. Perhaps we are living through such a night now. The world hums with noise, information, conflict, speed, yet beneath it all, there is a feeling of exhaustion, as if something deep within humanity is ready to rest. The systems we built to carry us forward now seem to carry us in circles. The more we know, the less we seem to understand. Technology expands, yet wisdom feels thinner. This is what twilight feels like, a dimming before the next beginning. It is easy to fear it, but fear is only the mind's way of resisting change. The earth knows better. It has seen countless nights. It knows that darkness is not an enemy, but a teacher. In the dark, the senses sharpen. Vision fades, but listening deepens. The long night before dawn invites us to listen again, not to the noise of civilization, but to the older, quieter sounds that have never left, the wind, the water, the pulse of our own blood. In the silence between distractions, we begin to remember what matters. Connection, compassion, simplicity, the rhythm that binds all life together. Perhaps this is what every dark age is truly for, a collective remembering through stillness. When the outer light fades, the inner light begins to glow. If we imagine the timeline of the earth as a single breath, Then our civilizations are sparks within it, brief, bright, and beautiful. Each time we burn out, the planet exhales, gathering our ashes into the soil of what comes next. Our ruins feed the roots of future ages. The long night is the digestion of experience. It is the turning of the wheel. To call it a fall is to misunderstand it. It is an integration, a necessary quiet, in which the lessons of an age are absorbed by the world that bore them. In every mythology, the same image appears, the descent into darkness before awakening. In Egypt, Ra journeys through the underworld each night, only to rise again at dawn. In Greece, Persephone descends into shadow before bringing spring. In countless creation stories, the world begins not with light, but with void. Darkness is the womb of becoming. It is not the opposite of light, but its cradle. Without it, no dawn could exist. When humanity enters its long nights, it too is returning to that cradle, not to die, but to dream itself anew. We can see signs of this rebirth even now. Amid the noise and confusion, there are flickers of awareness, people remembering the rhythm of the natural world, seeking harmony where there was once division, finding wonder in what was once ordinary. Science and spirituality, long estranged, are beginning to speak to one another again, both pointing toward the same truth, that everything is connected, that consciousness pervades all things. This, too, is part of the dawn. But it begins in darkness, in the quiet understanding that we cannot create the new while clinging to the old. The long night before dawn is not something to escape, but to enter fully. It asks for humility, the courage to admit that not all progress is growth, and not all loss is failure. It asks us to slow down, to let what no longer serves fall away. In that surrender, something ancient returns. The pulse beneath civilization, the memory of balance, the instinct for wonder, all of it waits for the silence that follows collapse. The long night is where the earth gathers its breath, where the seeds of tomorrow are scattered across the darkness. If you've ever watched the sky before sunrise, you know that the deepest dark comes just before the light. It's the hour when even the stars seem to hold their breath, when the world feels suspended between endings and beginnings. In that stillness, something shifts. The horizon softens, the air changes. You don't see the sun yet, but you can feel it. Hope has texture in that hour. The long night before dawn is that same moment on the scale of civilization, the final hush before awakening. Perhaps, in the great cycles of time, humanity has stood here many times before. We rise, we fall, we rise again, each time remembering a little more. Each age builds upon the dreams of the last, carrying forward fragments of wisdom like stars guiding us through the dark. Maybe the purpose of all this, the creation, the loss, the rediscovery, is to learn how to keep the light not only outside us, but within. Dawn is not a destination, it is a realization, a turning of awareness. So if you feel the weight of the world, now the uncertainty, the fear, the sense that everything familiar is dissolving, remember this. Darkness is not the end, it is the space in which light learns to return. The universe itself moves this way. Expansion, contraction, silence, song. You are part of that rhythm. We all are. The long night before dawn is simply the universe closing its eyes for a moment, gathering its strength to dream again. And when it opens them, when the first light spills across the horizon of time, everything that was will not be lost. It will be transformed. The night will have done its work. The world will remember itself anew, and we will stand again in that first golden hour, blinking in wonder at what feels new but has always been waiting, patient, in the dark. 19. When time forgets itself. There are moments when time seems to loosen, when the steady ticking that usually holds the world together falters for just an instant, and everything feels both ancient and immediate. You might have felt it before, standing in a place where history clings to the air, watching sunlight move through dust that feels older than the room you stand in. For a heartbeat, you sense that the past has not gone anywhere, that the future is already here, that all of it, every age, every life is layered together like waves on the same sea. It is in those moments that time forgets itself, and the illusion of linearity begins to dissolve. Time, as we know it, is a story we tell to make sense of movement. It gives shape to change, separates moments, so that we can understand cause and effect. But beneath that story, something else exists, a reality that does not flow from before to after, but simply is. The universe does not count seconds. Stars do not hurry from birth to death. Even our planet's orbit is not a clock, but a rhythm, circular, returning, alive. Time, in its truest form, is not a river, but an ocean, and we are the waves that mistake motion for progress. When time forgets itself, we glimpse that ocean vast, still, infinite, and realize that every moment we have ever lived still ripples somewhere within it. Ancient cultures seem to understand this intuitively. They spoke not of past and future, but of cycles, the turning of ages, the repetition of celestial patterns, the eternal return. The Mayans, the Hindus, the Hopi, all describe time as a wheel rather than a line. To them, history did not move forward but inward, spiraling toward deeper understanding. The same events, the same lessons, return again and again, not as punishment but as opportunity. The wheel turns until its center is found. In that way, the ancients saw themselves not trapped in time, but participating in its unfolding. They were dancers in a rhythm that never ends. We, however, learn to measure, to divide the infinite into hours, minutes, seconds, to mark beginnings and endings, births and deaths, as though time was something to be owned, quantified, spent. We built clocks to tame the sky, calendars to confine eternity. And for a while, it worked. We built civilizations upon precision, progress upon punctuality. But in our effort to master time, we forgot how to live within it. We began to treat it as something outside of us, a resource instead of a presence. Yet time is not an external force pressing upon us. It is woven through us, pulsing in the rhythm of our hearts, the cycles of our breath, the turning of our thoughts. We are not in time, we are time. Sometimes, though, the illusion of control slips. You look into the eyes of a stranger and feel you've known them forever. You hear a song that fills you with longing for something you can't name. You walk into a place you've never been and know exactly where everything once stood. These are not accidents of memory, they are overlaps, layers of existence briefly touching. When time forgets itself, it allows us to remember what it means to be infinite, to exist not as a line with a beginning and an end, but as a circle without edge. Physics, in its quietest corners, has begun to whisper the same thing that poets have known for centuries, that time may not be what it seems. Einstein's relativity showed that time bends, stretches, slows. Quantum theory suggests that particles can exist in multiple states at once, that events can influence each other across distance and even backward through time. The universe, it seems, does not obey our clocks. It hums in harmonies we are only beginning to hear. When we dream, when we lose ourselves in creation, when we experience déjà vu, perhaps those are the moments when our consciousness slips free of the story we tell about time and drifts into its true form, eternal, simultaneous, whole. There is something both terrifying and comforting in this. Terrifying because it challenges everything we think we know about existence, comforting because it means nothing is ever truly lost. Every word ever spoken, every thought ever felt, every act of love or cruelty still moves through the fabric of time, echoing endlessly. We imagine the past as gone, but it may still be here, folded beneath our present like pages in a book we've forgotten how to read. Likewise, the future may already exist, waiting for us to turn the page. When time forgets itself, those pages overlap, and we find ourselves reading multiple chapters at once. Some people experience this as memory that does not belong to them, visions, dreams, sudden insights that seem too vivid to invent. Maybe these are not fantasies, but moments of temporal convergence, fragments of other times brushing against our awareness. The ancients might have called them prophecies. Today, we might call them anomalies, but perhaps they are simply natural reminders that time, when seen clearly, is not a straight path but a web, and every point on that web touches every other. The light from a distant star is millions of years old, yet it meets your eye now. In that meeting, past and present collapse into one. The universe does not experience delay, only we do. When you stand beneath the night sky, You are surrounded by light that began its journey before humans existed. You are seeing the world as it was millions of years ago, but your gaze, your awareness of it, is happening now. In that instant, two truths exist together: the ancient and the immediate, the dead and the living, the memory and the moment. The cosmos is full of such contradictions, and they are not mistakes, they are reminders. Time, in forgetting itself, allows connection. It allows continuity. It allows love to reach across centuries. Perhaps this is why the idea of reincarnation, of rebirth, has persisted across so many cultures. If time is not linear, then perhaps every life is simply another expression of the same eternal consciousness, exploring different points within the same field. Your future self might already exist. Your past self might still be unfolding. Every soul could be a constellation of moments, scattered through time, all connected by the same light. Death, then, would not be an end, but a change of perspective, one ripple among infinite others in the ocean of being. There are places in the world where this truth feels closer, ancient ruins, where the air feels thick with memory, forests that seem to breathe in unison, stones that hum faintly beneath your feet. These are places where time has softened, where the boundary between eras thins. The people who built those places may have understood this better than we do now. They constructed not just monuments, but anchors, points where time could remember itself, where the past could speak to the present. When we visit them, something in us awakens, as though recognizing a long-lost rhythm. We remember what time forgot, that we are not moving through history, but participating in it from all directions at once. When time forgets itself, fear dissolves. The rush to achieve, to hold, to preserve, fades into quiet wonder. You begin to see life not as a race against time, but as an expression of it. Every joy, every loss, every beginning and ending becomes part of the same eternal gesture, the universe knowing itself through motion. The moment you are in right now is as infinite as any star, as old as any age. So if you ever feel lost, if the future feels uncertain, or the past feels heavy, remember this: time is not a straight road you must walk. It is a vast field you are already within. You have been here before, and you will be here again. The days and nights may change their faces, but the essence remains. Somewhere, in another layer of the same now, you are already whole, already home. And when you feel that stillness between seconds, that breathless pause where everything seems to shimmer, that is the moment when time forgets itself, and you, for just an instant, remember forever. 20. The silence after everything. There will come a moment far beyond the reach of our calendars, beyond our languages, and even our dreams, when everything falls quiet. Not in destruction, not in despair, but in peace. The oceans will still shimmer, the stars will still burn, but the noise of striving, the hum of civilization, the heartbeat of history itself will fade into stillness. This is not the end of the world. It is the world remembering how to rest. The silence after everything is not absence. It is arrival, the return to what has always been waiting beneath sound, beneath time, beneath thought. Silence has always been the beginning and the end. Before the first word was spoken, before the first star ignited, there was silence, vast, unbroken, complete. Out of that stillness came vibration, and from vibration, form. The universe was not born in chaos but in resonance, the gentle tremor of something awakening from eternity. And one day, when all the vibrations have finished their songs, when the last echo has circled back to its source, that silence will come again, not to erase what has been, but to hold it. Everything we have ever been will rest inside it, like light returning to its star. Imagine it for a moment. A world without the rush of engines, without the murmur of voices, without the pulse of cities. The wind still moves, the waves still rise and fall, but the air feels different, full, weightless, aware. The silence after everything is not empty space. It is consciousness at peace with itself. Every sound we have ever made, every thought, every dream still exists within it, woven like threads into a tapestry too vast for human eyes. The universe does not forget. It carries memory not as noise, but as harmony. When all movement ceases, The harmony remains a note held forever in the still air of being. For those who fear endings, this silence might seem like loss, but loss is only another form of translation. What disappears from one level of reality becomes music on another. When a star dies, it sends its elements outward, seeding new worlds. When a forest burns, its ashes feed the soil. When a civilization falls, its essence becomes myth, story, instinct, carried quietly in the collective soul. The silence after everything is the culmination of that process. It is the moment when every echo finally returns home, when the universe exhales and listens to itself once more. Perhaps this is why, even in life, we seek silence. Deep down, we remember it. We long for it. Not the silence of absence, but the silence that feels alive, like the air before dawn. When you sit in nature and let the noise of thought dissolve, you can feel it, the hum beneath existence, the still presence that holds everything together. That silence is not separate from us. It is the core of what we are. Beneath all our movement, beneath every word and heartbeat, we are made of stillness. We are the quiet between two breaths. Throughout history, the wisest among us, mystics, philosophers, wanderers, have sought this understanding. They called it enlightenment, nirvana, union, oneness. But the experience was always the same. The dissolving of boundaries, the vanishing of time, the return to the silent source. Some found it in meditation, others in music, others in the soft edge of sleep. They all described it as something both infinite and intimate, the realization that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of truth. When everything unnecessary fades, what remains is the awareness that has always been listening. In that sense, the silence after everything is not somewhere we are going, but something we are remembering. It exists already, inside us and around us, waiting patiently beneath the noise of the world. Every time we fall still, we step closer to it. Every act of compassion, every moment of awe, every deep breath in the presence of beauty is a rehearsal for it, a small glimpse of what it means to merge back into the whole. The universe does not rush toward silence. It unfolds toward it naturally, the way a wave folds back into the sea. There is a strange paradox here. As civilization grows louder, as our technologies and voices fill the air, the yearning for quiet grows stronger. Maybe it is not the noise we fear losing, but the silence we fear remembering. Because to truly hear it is to realize that everything we cling to, every identity, every name, every ambition is temporary. Silence shows us what cannot be lost, and in doing so, takes away everything that can. That can be frightening, but it is also freeing. What remains after everything has fallen away is not nothingness. It is purity. It is peace. When the stars one day fade, when the last light flickers out in the cosmic sea, the universe will not vanish. It will return to the same stillness that birthed it. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Every photon, every vibration, every heartbeat will merge into that infinite quiet, like waves dissolving into calm water. In that silence, all opposites resolve, life and death, beginning and end, sound and stillness. The universe will not mourn its vanishing, it will smile at its remembering. The silence after everything will not be empty darkness. It will be filled with the luminous presence of all that has ever existed, resting together as one. Perhaps this is what the ancients meant when they spoke of eternity, not endless time, but timeless being. Eternity is not a line that stretches forever. It is a moment so complete it contains all others. The silence after everything is that eternal moment, when every word ever spoken finds its answer, when every question finally dissolves into understanding. It is the point where the song and the listener become one. If you've ever stood at the edge of an ocean at night, when the waves whisper rather than crash, and felt that strange blend of awe and peace, you have felt a shadow of that silence. The same silence exists in the pause between heartbeats, in the hush before rain, in the breath drawn just before saying something true. The universe leaves us clues everywhere, reminders of its origin, invitations to remember its nature. Silence is not something we must earn, it is what we have always been. When everything has been said, when every civilization has had its moment, When every thought has unfolded and folded back again, what remains is this: awareness without boundary. The silence after everything is not the extinction of sound, but the awakening of meaning. It is the moment when the cosmos realizes it has been dreaming all along, and in that realization, everything becomes whole again. So do not fear the silence. It is not the void. It is the voice before words, the calm before creation, the embrace that waits after every ending. It is the heartbeat of the infinite, and it is already here, listening, holding, remembering. One day, when the world grows still and the stars have sung their final songs, we will return to that silence not as lost wanderers, but as echoes finding their source. And in that eternal quiet, there will be no loss, no distance, no time, only the soundless truth that has always been: we were never apart from it. We were silence all along,